Let's begin our today's event. My name is Andriy Zaik and I'm the founder of the startup incubator YEP, and today's event will be devoted to the development of the startup ecosystem of Ukraine. This conference is about the development of entrepreneurship, so we would like to hear today lots of different opinions from different stakeholders and players in the Ukrainian ecosystem to find certain insights, and it could help to develop the startup culture, the entrepreneurship culture, to make it more efficient, especially among the youth. The today's speakers are representing different sides of the ecosystem. This is both the state and the private capital and the funds and venture funds and directly startups, which is rather important. And I would like, before we begin, I would like to say that this event is organized by YEP with the support of Usaid program of Competitive Economy of Ukraine, together with the Ministry of Digital Transformation of Ukraine and Dia Business. And also I'd like to express my gratitude for the support of us and our initiatives, our strategic partners, the Ministry of Education and of Ukraine, the company of Cisco, Oko, Genesis, and the Ukrainian founder startups. In particular, with the support of Usaid Competitive Economy of Ukraine, this year, in 2020, we managed to strengthen all of our programs in YEP and to conduct lots of high-quality activities on the support of the young entrepreneurship with the special focus in the universities and the students. So I'd like to share several results and to show the slides with the figures. It's a very short presentation, but let us look through it, what we managed to achieve. Would you show the presentation? During the last year, in all of the directions, in spite of our rather complicated year, we managed to do lots of things, so I will gladly share that. We have developed our activity in three spheres. First of all, the main pillar is the entrepreneurship education. We are working with the universities, with the students a lot. We help them to develop the entrepreneurship competences and the entrepreneurial thinking. The second part, the second component of the whole project is the incubation itself, where we help at the earlier stages of startups to go along the complicated, hard beginning way, the stage of idea up to the first vision of the product, the first strategy of the market exit. And the third component, the third part of our internal ecosystem is acceleration, where we accelerate, in fact, the startups which have the biggest potential after the incubation. We pay them lots of attention, we give them deeper mentorship, and we help them to move on rather active way before they exit to the market and become much more successful. Those are the three components we are working with. In more details, according to the results, we can see as for the universities, the first of this component, this year we managed to expand the number of universities which are working with us up to 86, and this is a very big network which allows us to work efficiently in the universities community. Those universities are almost all over Ukraine, 29 cities, the whole geography, really nice outcomes, as a result more than 5,000 students attended our activities during the last year, and it's also a very nice leap in comparison with the previous periods. As for incubation itself, in 2020, in spite of the lockdown and pandemics, we managed to create 3 selections in comparison with the usual mode of 2 selections a year, and to incubate 112 startups at the earlier stage. After that, 17 of those startups were going through the acceleration. They were accelerated to achieve really nice leap as for the market, as for the exit to the market. And as the outcome of all of this work, really nice figures, almost $350,000 were attracted by our alumni as the beginning investments or the grants for the development of their projects. Today we will share 2 successful story of our startups. We also invited them to take part in our conference. One of the startups, which is our alumni, a graduate, and will be present here, its founder Taras Pogrebnyak, is the app which is artificial intelligence, which totally replaces the psychologist and helps people to fight depression and stressful situations online, which is a very successful startup, which recently has shown really nice progress. And the second startup, which we'll share today, this is the case, and we also invited Andriy Konovalenko, who is the founder of CamTouch startup. This is the gadget. This is a kind of a device which allows you to transform any surface into the interactive one, and it is actively used in the educational sphere. Now in Ukraine, almost 500 classes and audiences in the schools and other educational institutions are using the device of CamTouch for their educational process. It's also very cool, it's a nice indicator, and Andriy will be present during the second panel discussion as a speaker today. As for our indicators and our success stories, we can compare how it used to be, formally speaking, in 2019 and what we managed to do in 2020. We grew in all of the spheres, which really makes me happy and gives us good perspectives for the future. We increased the number of the students multiple times who are involved in our activities, and what's the most positive, we managed to grow almost 15 times in the figures of the attracted investments and grants into our startups, which helps them to develop more efficiently, and from our behalf it's a nice impact into the development of those young startups. I'd like also to dwell upon separately, if we speak about the ecosystem altogether, I'd like to dwell upon this picture. This is the tech ecosystem map, which was presented last year by the U Ventures Fund, and I'd like to drive your attention to the center of the slide. There you can see the block which has the name of University Entrepreneurship, which has lots of question marks. And it means that this segment in the ecosystem needs the most attention. It has lots of room for development. That is why we are focusing first of all on this segment, because I personally consider that this part of the universities is the core, should be the core of the ecosystem. That is why we focus upon that. And I'd like to tell about our initiative, which we launched together with the partners of Usaid, the Program of Competitive Economy of Ukraine, the Ministry of Digital Transformation of Ukraine, Dear Business, the Ukrainian Startup Fund, and the Ministry of Education. Last September, we launched the pilot project and integrated the course on startup management into the curriculum of the universities, and the students during the sessions can study to create startups. This project was announced on the 22nd of September, and since the autumn-fall semester, 64 universities integrated this course, and in the 64 universities they finalized this course. They worked on more than 400 startup ideas by the students, and more than 2,300 students were involved in this pilot. That's a nice result, and for us it's the indicator of the potential which the universities have. That is why we are planning to focus on this direction more and to develop the initiative of the entrepreneurial university together with our partner this year and the next year to create the new entrepreneurial culture in the universities. And according to our vision, the main aim, the main goal, and the main impact point we'd like to focus upon in the university community is the change of the culture, the change of the thinking. You need to change certain standards, how the youth treats entrepreneurship, and we're ready to work on that further on. Well, of course, we can speak a lot about that and listen about that, but it's much better to see. So we prepared additionally a video where we included the main activities of the last year. I would gladly offer you to watch it, and after that instantly we'll be able to begin the panel discussion, the first one which we planned. So let's watch the 3-minute video, and then we are beginning the discussion. YEP is the platform which gives the opportunities to the youth to develop and test their ideas in the entrepreneurship. OK Town is the optimized marketplace for the sales of touristic services and local tourism. Bloggermall is the platform for cooperation with the bloggers. At the beginning stage of the startup, it's so important to get into the proper environment, and this environment is formed by YEP. We created the ecosystem, which has the opportunity for any young entrepreneurship, in spite of the stage of his idea, to find for himself or herself the proper content, to find the proper knowledge, and to find, most of all, the most important, the proper environment to help to develop this idea and really to become the startup, the business, the product, which will find its way to the market. Startup the startup. This is the show which is for the students who just thinking or in doubts whether they should create or maybe they shouldn't create their own enterprises. We developed the course and integrated it into the curriculums. And we need the help how to develop more, and also it was interesting to communicate with the mentors and to listen to their opinion about our product. During 2020, the incubation programs of YEP had more than 100 of startups. Out of them, 40 startups graduated, presenting their idea at this demo days. YEP helped me to create the team to analyze all the aspects which market will be working with, and altogether it helped in lots of points when we created and developed this project in all of the details. Thanks to the participants in YEP, we formulated more precisely the development trend for the following several months, and also the participants in YEP helped us to get prepared for the pitch at the event of the Ukrainian Startup Fund, and we won the grant of $25,000. We really strengthened the acceleration program. As for now, we have 17 startups in this program. We increased the number of mentors who are helping our startups to increase their indicators and to move in the proper direction. Mostly our mentors are from their own startups or their own other bigger businesses. They have a huge experience in marketing, in sales, in the businesses and to the external markets exit, and they help our startups in that. The startups from the accelerator of YEP involved more than $350,000 of grants or investments in their projects, and we are going on to help them to develop and to achieve new levels. Cooperation with the Usaid competitive economy of Ukraine, YEP managed to improve each of their programs. We expanded the number of mentors, involved additional partners. Thanks to such cooperation, we created a substantial leap in 2020, and it gave us an additional push for the development for the future. So now we can begin the first panel discussion. I'm gladly introducing our today's panel participants. So in the first panel, we'll speak about the ecosystem at the national level, the culture of entrepreneurship, and how it is developing in Ukraine. I'd like to introduce the panelists of the first panel discussion. We are having Artur Seletsky, Deputy Minister of Education and Science of Ukraine, on the issues of digital development, digital transformation and digitalization. James Hope, the head of Usaid mission in Ukraine and Belarus. Yaroslav Azhnyuk, the founder and CEO of PetCube startup, and Taras Pogrebnyak, the founder and CEO of Elomia startup. So let us begin. As I already mentioned during the introduction speech, we are working a lot with the universities, and we are focusing on the students to develop the entrepreneurship culture from that level. And I consider universities to be the core of the ecosystem. In this activity, it's so important to see support from the ministry. It would be interesting to listen to you, Artur, to get to know what's the position of the ministry from this side, and how does the ministry plan to support the development of the entrepreneurship? Thank you, Andriy. Thank you that you invited me to this conference. First of all, do you remember? I also was involved into YEP. I used to be the mentor, right? I do remember. Okay, I'm really happy that YEP is going on with the development. 86 universities. It's really cool. When we began to work together with you, they were not that numerous. I do remember the first sessions which we conducted when I was as a mentor, I did see how you help to develop students. The main component is, first of all, for the students, that the student will be able to work in the team. It's a really cool skill, and it's so cool to develop soft skills there as well. The Ministry of Education is supporting all of the work which help to develop our students. As of today, I know lots of the students who were studying in YEP school, through the University of YEP, I would say, which are really cool experts in their sphere. Some of them have founded their own businesses. So the development of entrepreneurship in the universities is the skill which you can get at the university instantly. So I also support the ministry that such programs should be developed further on in all of the universities. I can see huge development in that, and it really helps the students not only to develop as in some separate directions, but also as a human being, as a person, to develop your soft skills and to develop your hard skills as well. As I know that you've got lots of cool mentors who are coming and sharing their experience. It is really cool that in our country, really, we develop such accelerators, such spheres. I'm satisfied that our students have such an opportunity. Unfortunately, when I used to be a student, I didn't have such an opportunity, and it was much harder for me to find myself. And it also helps you to find your place in the world. So thank you that you exist, and you're creating such a wonderful thing. Thank you, Artur. Thank you for such support, and that the ministry is strategically supporting the development of entrepreneurial competences altogether at the universities, and that we are cooperating efficiently. I already mentioned today about our cooperation with the Usaid Competitive Economy of Ukraine program with Usaid. And it is so important when the donors are also supporting the development of the ecosystem. Usaid is implementing in Ukraine lots of programs which are supporting both entrepreneurs, startups, technological ones, and ecosystem projects, which is so important and which is a good impact into the development of the whole ecosystem and the push and the impact. So I am happily giving the floor now to James Hope. James is the head of USAID mission in Ukraine and Belarus, and it's interesting to listen to your opinion about that, about the development of entrepreneurship and support of USAID.
Excellent. Thank you. Andrei, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Perfect. I wish I could be there in person with you, but as often in today's world, I'll be joining virtually. So thank you, Dobro ranku, and thanks for the warm welcome. Greetings to all of you. I'm very happy to be here today, including all of the entrepreneurs and partners online, to help celebrate the successful first year of this partnership to develop and strengthen the IT startup ecosystem for students. Now, we all know small business, that's the backbone of a strong and developed economy. That's true here in Ukraine, and that's true back in the United States as well. And a thriving small business sector is critical to creating jobs and ensuring the resiliency of the economy in countries around the world. That's why supporting young entrepreneurs is so critical. And that's why USAID supports young entrepreneurs here in Ukraine and around the world. Here, our support to YEP continues a very strong tradition of USAID assistance to entrepreneurship and young entrepreneurs. In just this first year of collaboration, as Andrei noted earlier, 86 universities piloted an entrepreneurship course that saw more than 2,300 students complete. These impressive statistics show that there's a strong and clear demand for these types of activities. But here's something even more impressive. That's the startups that graduated from YEP's acceleration programs, and as noted earlier, attracted almost $350,000 in funding. Several of YEP's alumni startups, including at Alomia, which we'll hear from later today, received pre-seed grants from the Ukrainian Startup Fund. So congratulations to all of these entrepreneurs. What a great start for your business and for your careers. Now, of course, fostering and harnessing the entrepreneurial spirit is made easier by partnership with the government of Ukraine and the private sector. The government, their job is to help ease the way, create the right conditions for entrepreneurs. And the private sector brings practical perspectives and proven techniques gained through real-world experience. So in the United States, I call Austin, Texas home. The city, Austin, it's a testament, a model of the power of entrepreneurship, especially in the technology sphere. It changed the face of the city in little more than a generation as Austin grew as a tech hub. So first, back in the 1970s, building on the presence of large companies such as Texas Instruments, IBM, Motorola, the University of Texas established a think tank to explore how to best support economic development with a tech focus. And then in 1989, the University of Texas founded the Austin Technology Incubator to support tech startups. So over the course of just a decade or so, the public-private ecosystem was put firmly into place. It changed how people thought, it changed their approach, and it changed the landscape for entrepreneurship and small business growth. And today, Austin is perhaps the most vibrant tech city in the entire United States. Although I know many other cities would argue that, but Austin, I would say, is the most. And the roots of this success is the collaboration between universities, the private sector, and government, just like the program that we're all working together on here. And that's the same goal that we all have, right? Foster growth through entrepreneurship and partnership. Now, I know how creative and IT savvy Ukrainians are around the country, and I have no doubt at all that you're going to be fully successful, and Ukraine will lead the way on a global scale in tech development and tech entrepreneurship. And USAID and our partners at CEP and across our portfolio, we're very proud and very happy to be your partners in this journey. So thanks very much for today. Look forward to the discussion, and дуже дякую.
Дуже дякую, Джеймс.
Thank you so much, James. Thank you for the support of USAID, of our initiatives, and for the implementations of those programs which we have in Ukraine, which help the ecosystem to develop. As for private companies, as James has mentioned, we have the representatives of two startups here, and they're rather diverse, but it would be interesting to listen to their opinion. We do understand that in our ecosystem in Ukraine, to be a powerful and stable one, we need to do lots of things. We need to develop a lot. So what we do, we're trying... Well, the task of the ecosystem is to create the conditions for the entrepreneurs, for them to work and to develop, for the new startups to emerge, and for those which exist to have certain resources, the infrastructure, and all the conditions for the successful development. We are creating the certain ecosystem for younger startups, for the beginners, for those which are at the stage of idea. But it would be interesting to listen to the opinion of these startups which have had certain way, they have certain success, they have achievements at the global market, and maybe kind of a feedback, what you would like to have in the ecosystem. Again, Yaroslav, what do you think? What's the level of ecosystem in Ukraine now? Can we say that it is already helping the startups, the younger startups, which are only beginning, or it is still underdeveloped? And what could be done? What's your vision from your point of view as the founder of a startup which has already achieved certain results? How do you see that in Ukraine? Yes, thank you, Andriy. I think that undoubtedly the existence of such initiatives as YEP and such projects as LIFT and lots of other projects which exist in Ukraine, not only in Kiev, is rather useful, and any movement helps the development of the new companies. I think that we need to focus on not only the companies should focus, but also the companies all over the world, is the higher threshold for the ambitions. I deal with this business for the 8 years. We're creating smart cameras for the pet owners. We have production and manufacturing in China. We sell them in the US, and the whole team of ours is in Ukraine. So what do I see? What do I observe traveling along the world and working? Because for 6 years I've been working in San Francisco. I used to be in Austin. James, keep Austin weird, because it's really cool. And those are interesting centers of world innovations, and what really makes them different is the high level of ambitions and the wish to create ambitious things which really creating the value, creating the use for the whole world. So what I can see among the founders who are coming from the whole world, that rather often they have to rise their ambitions and to increase their willingness to become the part of our ecosystem. For our entrepreneurships, not only to speak about how to sell vegetables, they should think how to create the business which would allow you, the vegetable sellers, to have the trade all over the world. Let us transform bigger industries like education, like legal sphere, like environmental spheres, like the energy sector, like machine building, like plane building. There are lots of industries in the world which never had substantial changes during the last 5 decades, 100, 200 years. For instance, the education and healthcare. Those are the spheres which are really in stagnation. So that's where we need the innovations and the biggest use, both for the new generations of the entrepreneurs who are looking at the role models and are inspired by them, both for Ukraine and for themselves. The entrepreneurs should think with ambitions, and the state should create the conditions for this ambitious thinking. First of all, that's of course the knowledge of English. It's critically important for people to know English perfectly, and then they will watch Joe Rogan instead of Dude, the Russian blogger. And there are lots of problems connected with this empire orbit of Russia. And from the perspective of the media, from the perspective of the organization like these, the creation of the conditions, the assistance to achieve higher, more ambitious aims is important, as ambitious aims are not only helping to attract capital, they're also, what's more important, to attract the talents, because the talented people want to work on something which is really important. And as for cooperation, through the Ministry of Education, the state, this is the elephant in the room, because I know that lots of people are worried about that. And it's not that easy to cooperate when there are people in the structure of the ministry who are accusing you in plagiarism. And the entrepreneurship could not emerge when people are just copying something. What used to be people are just copying, then entrepreneurship emerges where we have real innovations. That's what's important, but we will fight that as well. Thank you. Thank you, Yaroslav. That was the opinion of the startup, which we can say a very mature one. It is present at the global market for a long time and it's successfully growing. But it would be also interesting to understand the opinion of what we are doing as YEP with the support of the young startups. The closest for us is the opinion of Taras. Taras is the founder of Ilomia, which is a very young startup, which is only beginning its way, though it's rather successful and has certain progress. So from the perspective of you, as the founder of startup in the ecosystem, so you are in this community, you're boiling within it, you're developing your startup, you feel certain impact or influence or maybe indifference of the external ecosystem. And you're a startup blogger. We know that you have your own Telegram channel about startups in Ukraine, and you need to understand this mood, those conditions which are now existent in Ukraine. And as a young startup, as a founder who is also only the beginner on the first steps, how do you feel this interaction with the system? Does it exist or not? What lacks? And of course, it would be interesting to listen to the story of Elomia, because we need to understand the context. Okay, thank you. Well, in fact, when the YEP just began in my city of Kharkiv, I was present there, and the idea was totally different then, not Elomia. But I don't think that the idea is so important. I would say that the most important thing is the mission, to help the people who are affected by the psychological problems and issues. The part of the solution has changed gradually, and if we speak about the ecosystem, we can say that 3 years ago, when we had certain lecturers at the YEP Starter, there was the feeling that I am getting to know something new and the world is getting upside down for me. And that is why. Because mostly, when people are speaking about the startups, they can imagine expensive cars and money and everything like this, but also they should imagine experienced and expensive education, the coolest experts, as it was mentioned above. But in fact, there are no experts. They don't exist how to create startups. And this is the obstacle, because the same young people thinking, I did not have an Oxford education, I don't have the start capital, so I won't be able to do it. In fact, all of that is not the key one, is not the most significant. Yes, it's nice when you have the money which you can invest into different ideas, but there are lots of people, and those people will never do with all the money of the world. So it would be nice to develop what YEP is doing. I mean, to show to the students that the startups, well, yes, they look like this, but in fact, it's about a different thing. It's what you'd like to change in the world, or what you like to do, in fact, because there are lots of people who are now creating startups for the sake of money. Thanks to YEP and thanks to Usaid and thanks to the shows, they decided to create their startups, so they create the picture first of a successful person. But the trick is that this picture is totally fictitious. If we look at the expectations, there are super exclusions like PetCube, but the majority of startups, even if they are super successful and if they do everything properly, they will still be closed. And those which won't be closed, they won't give as much money as it can seem. PetCube is an exclusion. So if you're trying to following money, startups won't get those money. The people who really like to do something which never existed before, those are the people who should do that. But they can be scared off by this picture, the necessity to have a car, the start capital, and so on. So it's cool that YEP is doing that. And how it began for me, I never thought about the cars or money or something like that. And I'm not thinking about that now. We are doing our startup for 2 years. It's super hard. It's like having a child. But I don't think that someone would like to have a child when you are 21-year-old. But it turns out that I have a child now. I communicated with Lena, with whom we got acquainted during the first pitch in Unit City. She became our advisor, and recently we communicated, and I told her, we are working for 2 years, yes. We are working overtime without any weekends, without any relaxation, but I told her that if we are closed, I won't be frustrated that I don't get money, because I did whatever I could and I did whatever I like, and if I didn't like it, I wouldn't deal with that even for a second, because it's too hard. I wouldn't do it without the money. Yaroslav, is this the proper ambition? Because you were speaking about ambitions. I think it's a healthy approach. I totally agree that people are creating businesses, and the best founders are creating businesses not because they want to earn money, but because they want to change something for the better in the world. And undoubtedly, the creation of the value should be the main focus, and money, fame, and power is more the outcome. It's a side effect. One point, what I'd like to add to Taras's words, if you solve a big issue, like in this case we are speaking about the issue of mental health, which is a very big one. Just in the US, during the latest statistical data, every sixth person has some issues in this sphere, and we can speak about the epidemics of the mental diseases. Of course, it's a huge market. So when you solve this issue, the whole world around you, around this big mass body, is attracted. There are people who would like to help you with their advice, with the connections, with their investments, with their expert efforts, joining your team. Or maybe there can be another body with a bigger mass, a different company which solves this similar problem, and then this mass, the impactfulness and the importance of the market, helps this company to gain strength, to absorb, to buy, to acquire the smaller company. That is why it's so important to aim for global markets and ambitious problems. Because even if the company is not successful, at the market of the United States, the not successful companies are bought for dozens of millions of dollars. It's a fail according to American indicators. If you're bought not for billions but for hundreds of thousands, it's the fail. But for the Ukrainian company, if somebody wants to buy you for 50 million, maybe you will be bought, maybe you won't, maybe your investors would mind, maybe they wouldn't, but it wouldn't be considered as a failure. It wouldn't be considered as a defeat. So in this context, it's again what I'd like to approve. There is some sense to create bigger companies, because if you have the fail with the smaller companies, you don't have anything. But if you create a bigger one, you can sell this company for dozens of millions of dollars. So again, the same recommendation, the ambitions. The tech innovation companies are the foundation for the economy of the country now. And taking into account that there are lots of needs and issues in lots of industries which you've already mentioned, the opportunities for the entrepreneurs can be anywhere. And taking into account the digital tools opportunities for the promotion, for the expansion onto different markets, you can see constant opportunities. There is a whole issue, and maybe the problem, as for their support at the beginning stages. The entrepreneurs are facing huge issues at the beginning stages. It's so important to support them with the resources, with the early funding, and I know that one of the priorities of Usaid is the support of technological entrepreneurship. I'd like to ask James now, why the technological entrepreneurship? Why does Usaid support technological entrepreneurship? James?
Thanks, Andrei. Great question. So I'll try quick. First of all, as others have mentioned, this is one of the foundations of the modern economy in so many countries, and so that's why USAID really invests in tech entrepreneurship around the world, because tech drives economic growth, it drives economic development, and it drives a whole generation of modern business. And so we want to invest in that next generation of business leaders, like the folks there on the stage, who really represent the future trajectory for Ukraine on the global economy. So for us, Ukraine is really just this shining example. It's a model of success, not just in the country, but around the world. And the dynamics of tech entrepreneurship and startup development here are so positive, and we really believe that this is what's going to stimulate further growth in the country. So just as an example, last year, a Ukrainian delegation with 13 startups attended the Startup Grind in Silicon Valley, which of course we know is one of the leading global tech conferences. And the Ukraine delegation was recognized by the conference organizers as the #1 national delegation. 5 of the delegation were part of the programs that we're talking about today with YEP and being supported by the Competitiveness Economy Program. One of those 13 attendees, Axdraft, was later acquired by a big US tech services company. And of course, the company's management and staff are here in Ukraine. Another attendee, Delfast, not only started selling its electric bikes to the US and Mexico, it also raised $3.5 million in crowdsourced funding in Ukraine to build a factory. So these are great examples, right? This is why investors and development partners like Usaid are so interested in supporting this, because we believe this is how you can create and generate more success in the tech world and the tech sector that can impact here in Ukraine and on a global scale. So we're going to keep doing this. We're here for the long term, and we really see lots and lots of opportunities for young entrepreneurs to believe in themselves, to take risks, to get out there and explore and use their passion to make positive change through technology and entrepreneurship. Thanks.
Дякую, Джеймс.
Thank you, James. And in our turn, we will try to develop as many entrepreneurs as possible to the level of startup, and Usaid will be able to support them. And I'd like to come back to those young entrepreneurships, to the university, to the culture now, because I in fact consider that the entrepreneurship culture and education is a kind of a very basic thing which should be systematic. If you do it in a systematic way, if more people know about that, then there will be more of them involved in the ecosystem. It will be a systematic, stable, fresh blood at the market, which will be transformed into certain results, products, the participants in the startup companies, and so on. So it looks like the whole youth is in the universities. The universities have huge responsibility to develop this culture within them. So again, the question is to Artur, because the ministry is working with the universities. So do you have that in the strategy? How do you cooperate with the universities in this direction? What's your vision? How we can improve that in the universities? First of all, every university is autonomous and it can select its own way. From our behalf, we support as much as possible, the development of startups at the universities. There are lots of subjects introduced in through the curriculum. And as for the startups, I liked the comments of my colleagues that it's not only about money. I do remember my startup when I began to cooperate with YEP, and I created my startup. I was creating IT community, and again, it was not always about the money, as it was mentioned above by my colleagues. When we began and founded our startup, I understood that, in fact, we will not earn money. We have our own values. Every student, when I was working with them, I told them, you need to have the sparkle in the eye for this thing. You need to find yourselves. So when we organized the communities of IT guys, as of today, this is the biggest IT community in Ukraine, which has more than 10,000 people within it. I always said, if you like it, it will always rise. Even if you don't earn money, you will get some fun. And what's the most valuable is the knowledge. The more you know, the more developed you are, the more ambitious you are, the more you achieve the aims and goals which you appoint for yourselves. That is why the startup is not only about the money, it's not always about the money. There are educational and social startups which are aimed for the help and support. I could afford myself to invest into that. I understood that we will earn money on that, but I understood that the value is the development of IT industry in Ukraine, and this startup should develop further on, and we are helping all of the students. The same as for the ministry. We are trying to help the students as much as we can to develop themselves, not only according to the curricula, but according to the programs which allow them to grow as a personality. But still, the universities are autonomously taking these decisions, and there should be their strategic vision whether they should pursue that or not, yes. So taking that into consideration, I should say that the universities are ready to do that, because during the pilot semester, when we last fall began that, in the beginning we got 147 applications from 147 universities who told us that they would like to be involved into this topic and to develop it. So I think it's a huge potential. Yes, the ministry will be only happy that such programs are emerging in the universities. It's wonderful. It's just perfect. It provides more support for our students to develop. In fact, in autumn, we launched in approximately 70 universities the training of startup management during their sessions and lectures. Yaroslav, this is the question to you. During the lectures in this subject, this is the academic course, but within this subject, we have the incubation program according to Lean, so they are trained with the help of the very modern materials. And more than 2,500 students have had this course. We would like to develop it. We would like to have 5,000 students trained to create startups at the sessions, at their lectures with a high quality. But the question is to you. I told about the culture and the university says the core. Maybe I'm exaggerating. Maybe there is something more important in the ecosystem. You, as the startup, who can look from the different perspectives, taking into account your experience. Maybe there is something more critical which you'd like to pay attention to and to develop. So first, about the universities, and secondly, maybe we are missing something. Well, you know, I think it's a cool initiative, and the solution of the bigger tasks is important. How to increase the number of entrepreneurs in Ukraine. This is always the process of the search. It's like a scientific process. The hypothesis, the experiment, the assessment of the outcome. And then again, hypothesis, experiment. This is the scientific method. So what you're doing now is one of the experiments, and we will see its results in 5 or 10 years. You're solving the issue which is so far not solved globally. Nowhere in the world there is the system which would recommend itself from the creation of the new entrepreneurs. In the United States and in China, anywhere they try to find entrepreneurs. I'd like to tell an interesting story which will lead to the deeper key than just education in the university. This is the story about the group of Chinese scientists which in the 90s, when the Communist Party sent them to the United States and said, look, we know how to copy, but we don't know how to invent. So would you go to the US and find out why they're so cool inventors? This group of scientists went to the US, they went along different universities, they were thinking, stipulating, and sometime they came back and said to the Communist Party, we understood, we need to allow and permit science fiction and comics. Because it turns out that in China, in the Communist China, they censored science fiction novels which could pose the ideological threat to the Communist Party. For the people who know the history of the Soviet times, they know that. We can see that in Russia now. And when we begin to think about that, we understand that, in fact, the wish to create, the ability to imagine what does not exist so far, the ability which is embedded in the people since the early years, from the comic books, Marvel and DC books, or anime in Japan, from the cartoons and the books of Jules Verne, the novels of Isaac Asimov, and so forth. It seems to me that it's so important to support this sphere in Ukraine as well. The sphere of the creation of the pantheon of heroes. And it shouldn't be just Ukrainian ones. There shouldn't be just Cossacks or just the dukes from Kiev and Rus. We should create the pantheon of the heroes, which would be interesting at the global scale. If you want something like Ukrainian anime, there is one company which deals that, and I think they are rather successful. They have the name of Vola Production or something like that, the will. They've issued several comic books about the Ukrainians of the Ukrainian People's Republic times and the times of Kiev and Rus. in different genres. Recently they issued the cyberpunk comic book where Pavlo Zibrov, the singer, is the main character with retrofuturism in Kiev of the 80s. So in my opinion, when you're 5 or 10 years old, you're reading those books, you're getting inspired, you understand that whatever you imagine is possible, and then you grow up and suddenly in the university you're reading some article about some startup which achieved something and you think, I can do it much better. So you just pull up your sleeves and you're playing this game. You want to play this game. Maybe you don't know anything, but you will study that in the process. You will gather all the resources if you have this curiosity, if you are willing. There is a very substantial and significant Ukrainian pedagogue, Sukhomlinsky, who said that the student is not the cup you need to fill. The student is the fire you need to so you want to add the subject of science fiction in the universities? No, much earlier, not the universities. But we need some cool people who are creating science fiction, and there are cultural institutions which are dealing with that. So in the technological community, we're speaking about technological businesses, IT, computers, coding, but now we need to speak broader. We need to speak about the creative economy, the world where the ideas and the creators of those ideas are important, and here should be cultural projects, books and comic books and computer games and games, philosophical, intellectual products like new global ideologies could also be the part of this economy. And in fact, what we need to try to develop is this broader sphere, because they are really intertwined, because you have the philosophy, you have the technology, you have the art, you have the legal sphere, you have the finance. All of these are the components where you can be creative, you can reinvent, and we need to focus on them. We need to reimagine them for ourselves. So in fact it means to break certain cliches in the heads, yes, sure, and this would open those. It would expand the limits, ambitions limits. Yes, Artur, would you like to add something? Yes, thank you for your answer. What's also done by the Ministry of Education, we are creating the unified scientific platform where we'll collect all the information about our scientific achievements, and we would like to create the platform for the beginners scientists where they can communicate. For us to take the mentorship, the people who are growing up since schools, because we shouldn't think only about universities, we should think about schools as well. And also we are creating, well, I would open this secret, soon there will be a new product of ours like Science to Business. Science for the business, where we'll give the opportunity to the scientists to communicate with the businesses and to create this nod, which would help to develop our science and youth in science. We shouldn't think just about entrepreneurship and startups. We should also think for the scientists, our scientific component to grow. The ministry is doing a lot for that as well. Thank you. As far as I understood, I have the last question to Taras now, because he is the recent newcomer into this community, and he's the youngest startupper. So he remembers that 2 years ago how he began. I have a very precise and specific question. When you began in Elomia, not even Elomia, I do remember the first name of your startup. When you began, what you lacked most of all? Where were the biggest gaps which you would like to get some support for? Or maybe there was nothing like that and you were just working and you didn't want anyone to interfere. The problem was that I didn't know what I lacked, but when I got to know what I lacked, I could get it. So I don't know, maybe I lacked lecturers at the YouTube. How did you get to know about that? The issue that you didn't know what to begin with, right? Where to go to, where to rush to. And then you got to know and it has become easier, right? It has become easier because there are lots of things told in the YouTube lectures which are useful. It's a very nice educational content. it's not that easy to say that I lacked something, because, for instance, I never worked in the office. Since my childhood, I coded, then I used to be a freelancer, then I graduated from the school, entered the university, the pandemics began, but I'm okay because I'm the freelancer for my whole life, so I'm not going outside at all. Nothing changed, everything is perfect. So I don't know. Maybe what was mentioned in the beginning, when you know what you lack, then you can say that you could get it. Yes, we had certain mistakes. But could we prevent them? Well, maybe if we could foresee the future. But if you had some mentor, right? Yes, I'd like to lead to that. Taras has mentioned about that for multiple times, that we need nice experts. And when you understand that you don't know how to move on, you have formally two options: or to go along these rakes on your own, or you have the mentor who says, here are the rakes, avoid them, this will be the shortcut. Well, the problem is that sometimes it can harm. For instance, 3 years ago, at the university where Yep had in Kharkiv, there were wonderful teachers, and we met, though I never studied there. I really liked it. And he really said the proper things there. But there are lots of other people who can advise you something, and if you do it, sometimes it can harm. So mentors are cool, but you need to filter, right? Well, but you don't know how to filter. You don't know. Could I comment upon that? During the last 8 years, I deal with mentorship, and now I create one more social project where I work. But before that, I worked with the students a lot. The latest case I will tell about, I took the student from Belarus, and when we conducted the session for the 4 countries, and the student came to me, I asked, why you? Because I had the one vacant place only. And she said, because she was graduating from the technological college, and she didn't have money to go to the university. So she needed a person to go along this way, to find the job in the business community and to earn money for the university studies. I instantly told her, look, I will give you certain recommendations, but you need to take the decisions. I can give you several options where to move to, but still, you need to take your own decisions. So the mentor is not the person who is leading you, taking your hand from point A to point B, but is the person who is telling about the possible ways. And the student herself needed to understand what way to go along. So the mentor is very useful, but the decision taking should be done by the person. I do apologize. And as for today, in 4 months, the student has found a job. She managed to enter the university and to pay for her studies. She is at the 3rd year now, and she is developing. So the start of the mentor is rather important. Well, if we conclude, if we sum it up, the Institute of Mentorship should be strong and powerful. There should be a big community of the people who have gone along this way, but the issue is how to use it. But this is the topic for a separate conversation. We need to do that as well. Unfortunately, we're out of time. It was very rapid. I thought that we could discuss much more, but no. We are out of time. So what I understand, we are moving in the right direction. We need to develop this culture additionally about the ambitions, and I will note it down to break the cliches and stereotypes and to achieve higher ambitions. And English language, right. So thank you that you've been with us during this hour. Unfortunately, we are out of time, so we need to finalize this panel, but in a quarter of an hour, we are waiting for a keynote speaker, Mikhailo Fedorov, the Minister of Digital Transformation, and after that, instantly we'll begin the second panel, so the viewers who are watching us don't leave us for too long. We'll go on soon. Now we have... Good day, everyone. We are beginning the next panel discussion, and I'd like to say that in spite of COVID-19 and economic problems, Ukraine could keep the dynamic development of innovative entrepreneurship being included into top 30 of technological countries, and Kyiv has become the European center of startups according to the startup ecosystem ranking from Startup Blink. Today we will speak how we should speed up the development of startup ecosystem, which players can be found at the market, which are not there, but we have some demand on them, about the resources and infrastructure, and about the plan of actions. Our today's speakers are Vitaly Goncharook, the director of the Ukrainian Startup Fund, the fund which in 2020 has funded 80 startups for the sum of money of more than 80 million hryvnia. Olena Mazhuga, investment manager of Genesis Investments, who will tell about the startup ecosystem from the perspective of the investor. Vitaly Goncharook, CEO of Augmented Pixels, a very successful Ukrainian entrepreneurship from the Silicon Valley, who is developing AI in Ukraine. Alexander Leshenko, the vice president of OKO Network. He's one of the drivers of innovative processes in Ukraine, in particular the involvement of external problems for the solution of the business tasks of the concern. And the founder of ChemTouch startup, Andriy Konovalenko. ChemTouch is the graduator of YEP Incubator, which is very symbolic here. So today each of the participants will have 5 minutes, and then we'll try to create a short discussion. And I'd like to give the floor first to Pavlo. Would you please tell about the plan of the Ukrainian Startup Foundation? What are the tendencies of the development of startups in Ukraine? What are the quality changes of startups? And what we lack in our ecosystem? Good day, everyone. My name is Vitaly Goncharook. I'm the director of the Ukrainian Startup Fund. So in a nutshell, I will introduce our fund. As of today, the fund exists for already 2 years. We've launched the first grant program in December 2017, and recently we had the first conference, the press conference devoted to the first anniversary. So we announced about the outcomes which we achieved. As of today, we are having approximately 90 startups for funding. We're also having 2 types of grants. $25,000 is the grant of pre-seed, and the seed grant is $50,000. And also we are actively developing other directions and trends. Some other of the directions of ours, which we will announce soon, will be acceleration. The program, it has already been developed. We formed the first plans. We've accredited 9 accelerators, 7 of which are international ones. The American and the British accelerators of the EU, and 2 Ukrainian ones. And also we are actively developing corporate innovations. So we have several corporate partners who are of DTAC and Vodafone and other companies. And also our partner is the European Business Association, with which we implement certain projects. So I may say that we are creating the platform which will give all the opportunities for the startups to get either funding or other types of assistance. And also we're actively involved in the educational projects. And it's so pleasant for us that we have become the partners in the entrepreneurship partnership of the universities, which is implemented by YEP. We are happy with those results, and we do hope this is not the first initiative which will help younger students and even school children, because we have the applicants among school children as well, to implement their dreams, innovative ideas and dreams, and to get the first funding ever. As of today, we are the biggest angel investor in Ukraine. We do hope that thanks to the financial opportunities given by the state, this niche will be actively developing, and more youth will be involved in the implementation of their first business projects. And we can be sure to achieve global markets, and Ukraine will be able to mention about itself. Would you remind the first startups and the recent ones? Do you have certain tendency? Could you separate any improvements? Are there any changes? You know, I don't want to separate some startups as they, first of all, are all at the early stages now, and secondly, they are totally different. But I may say the following, that during the first months of our program, we've got the maximum number of applications, approximately 300, 400 applications a month, maybe even more. As of today, we get 2, 3, 4 applications a day. So the number of applications is not that numerous, but we need to mention that the quality of the applications is much higher and better than it used to be. So we have certain experience, we've got lots of webinars, we've got lots of experts who provide the mentorship support to the startups, and we have the YouTube channel which shows all of the pitches, and each applicant can watch those pitches, analyze the presentation, the Q&A session, and to pilot much better, to apply, and to get the chances, better opportunities for funding. I know that you can apply online. Yes, totally. The whole procedure is totally paperless, beginning with the application itself and ending with the contract to get the grant. This is the first experience, the first fund which has totally implemented the whole paperless procedure. As of today, we've got certain plans to implement other projects and programs through our portal. We're actively negotiating that with the Ministry of Digital Transformation, and we hope that soon we'll be able to announce our first project with the international partners, which will be also implemented at our platform. As of today, our platform has the verification procedure going through it, and as soon as the decision is taken, we will publicly announce about that. But we are ready to share our platform with everybody who wishes to get it. So we invite everyone who desires to join us. And we do hope that one day our platform will become a kind of a marketplace for the startups and the whole ecosystem. Cool, thank you so much for this information, and I do hope that during the discussion we'll be able to discuss your plans as well, the plans for the future. It's so interesting. One more heavyweight among the investors is Genesis Investments. This is the investment fund which invests into the startups of Eastern Europe at the early stages. According to the results of the last 2 years, the fund has become the most active investor among the venture funds. Mostly Genesis invest into the startups 300,000-400,000, but one of the biggest contracts was even for 500,000. I think that it will be told much more by Olena Mazhuga. And would you please join us online? Olena, I'm happy to see you. Thank you that you joined us, even online. The floor is yours. Thank you for the invitation. I do apologize. Do you hear me? Okay. Thank you so much for such a short intro. I will tell in a nutshell about our fund. Genesis Investment was launched in the end of 2018, and yes, really, during the last 2 years, we were the most active investor at this stage in Ukraine. In 2 years, we've invested into 15 projects. Our team has grown, in fact, from 2 people to almost 15. We're planning to invest approximately with the same speed as we used before, to invest approximately up to $10 million a year, mostly into Ukrainian, Belarusian and Baltic startups. We've invested and are investing into the companies with the checks of approximately from $100,000 to $1 million if we speak about the first stage, and if we speak about the second stage, our check can achieve $2 million. So approximately in autumn 2020, we've awarded the contract, which was the investment into the Ukrainian startup, which has the name of All Right. That's an online school for English language studies. This is one of the biggest contracts into the Ukrainian startups, one of the biggest investments into the Ukrainian startups in 2020, by AIN version, if I'm not mistaken. Well, in fact, I wanted to tell why we invest into Ukrainian startups and why we made such a choice. One of the reasons why we made such a choice was that Ukraine has a very powerful technical component among the people who are doing business. But the business thinking, well, it exists, but not among everybody. And our market of technical talents needs expertise, additional knowledge, which the founders have from the Western countries, including the US. So Genesis, which is the sponsor, so-called sponsor of the investments of our fund, is the bigger business which is working at the international level and which has lots of competence how to create international bigger business and to bring it up at such markets like the United States market. Because of that, we decided to share the competence which we have already with our local entrepreneurs and to help them to create business at the same international scale as it is done by Genesis. You've mentioned that you're planning to go on at the same speed to conduct investments. Would you open the secret? What impacts the speed? What, for you as an investor in the ecosystem, is the signal for good or for worse? Well, first of all, I'd like to say that there are more and more nice startups emerging in Ukraine. And in fact, this flow of startups is endless, of those which are coming and of high quality. That is why one of the reasons why we are not going to slow down, because we have some room for investment. The second reason that in the investment business, in particular venture business, is about diversification. This or that way, we need to provide 100 investments for some of them to be of a scale of unicorn, as everybody is dreaming about. But it is not compulsory to have unicorn, but at least there are lots of companies which are valued more than $100 million. We need exits to earn with our investments. So as for statistical data, we need to maximize our chances for success. And the third reason why we are not going to slow down, because, as I already mentioned before, the foundation itself, the part of Genesis Fund, which can provide resources to go on investing. We have resources, we have some room to invest, so why not? Thank you so much for such insights. So I'd like to ask you as an expert. We've met lots of times at other programs, so you'll definitely be able to answer the question, how can we develop the investment culture in Ukraine? Well, if we speak about the so-called precise material, practical part, there are three sources which I would advise to read about taxing and who is planning to invest. One of them is the online course, which is taking place so far 2 times a year. It has the name of, for me not to be mistaken, Venture Build. This is the course which is made in the cooperation with the famous accelerator of Techstart. And in fact, I would advise it everyone who is planning to invest as an angel investor or as a fund. The second and the third resource, I would advise to read the books of Jameson Calacanis about angel investments. It has the name of Angel. And another book is about the culture of investment and venture startup in Silicon Valley? And what are the main points and stages of venture contracts in the US, in the Silicon Valley as we know it today? That's about the practical part. As for the investment culture from real investments perspective, how to show how it's all going on and how it is done, first of all, I would like to say that during the last years, we've had already nice changes in the picture of investments, in the venture contracts and investments into the startups, because we have already 10 foundations approximately, if I'm not mistaken, which are actively investing into Ukrainian startups. We've got lots of accelerators which are ready to support our Ukrainian startups, and moreover, the accelerators are coming from abroad who are interested in our market, and they help to develop our startups and invest into them. So there are already changes going on and taking place. So we think that this development is already going on. But to improve it a bit, well, I don't want to tell any cliches, but from the legal part, our system is not that perfect to provide investments of the venture character and to develop this sphere. In particular, because in the current system, where lots of startups are taking place according to the model that there is some company registered somewhere and there are lots of sole proprietors working for this company cannot just have the exit, but exit is what drives the venture ecosystem in each country, because exit is money. Exit is the promo, is the PR of the country and the startup ecosystem. Elena, thank you so much for such practical recommendations. It will come with the experience. The more exits we have, the more understandable and comprehensible it is how to prepare yourselves for the exit. So we are on the right way and will be able to help our startups to properly structure themselves to have an opportunity to provide nice exits. We'll come back to you during the discussion. As for now, thank you so much. And I would suggest to get to our next speaker, who is Vitaly Goncharook, a successful entrepreneur who had certain rounds of investments for 7 million, and also he's the head at the Committee on the Development of Artificial Intelligence attached to the Ministry of Digitalization. He should join us from the field research. As far as I understand now, he is researching AI in the mountains. Vitaly, are you in touch with us? Are you connected?
Чи чутно мене?
It's a pity we let Olena go, because Vitaly hasn't come from the mountains so far. I hear you. Oh, Vitaly, you hear us? Yes, yes, I do. We won't have a picture then. We thought that we can see how it is done properly in the field research of the AI. Unfortunately, my battery is going down too quickly, so I can disconnect. Okay, Vitaly, thank you so much that you're bringing your experience. Something is going wrong. You're sharing those costs and so on. The third point is so important in any product. Is its life cycle, which is not finalized when it is produced and the rollout has taken place, when it is used already. The life cycle of the development is beginning, and it's rather long. If it was a one-time development, you need to think how this product should be developed. You're bearing lots of costs for the maintenance and backups of those teams. But if it is the product of the different product, they're thinking as a startup how they can scale it up, who it can be sold then, and you're just becoming a customer. One more important point is the source of the working force. Because in fact you're checking the person in the fight, and not everybody is ready to go on working in the startup. Somebody wants to be a hired employee, so you can onboard such people as well. And one more point, as the startups are mostly younger people, especially if we take students, well, we are not that working with the students because they don't have that much of expertise and we cannot deal with their experience. We need more practice. But still, those are younger people who are totally differently considering this life, looking at the relationship between the employer-employee. So we are polishing our different models of the interaction with the people, because sooner or later, in 5 to 7 years, the company will have the certain younger people incoming. They will have a different psychology, different motivation. They won't be just taken by the career growth of 10 years. They're living with the short cycles. And their skills to work with them in those short cycles should be created working with the startups. I would say those are the main reasons why we consider the work with the startups in a serious way. Though we have lots of models, we have a big in-house of the development and R&D company and the product companies which are dealing with outsourcing only the time material as it is. But there is one more block of the work with the startups. Okay, thank you so much that you shared this information. There are some questions to you, but I will pose them after the last speaker, the bright representative of the Ukrainian startup community, having the floor. Andriy from the ChemTouch company. This is the device which transforms any surface into the interactive one in several minutes. Did you bring it? Yes, I brought it, but I won't show it. You won't? Okay. Then let us create one more showcase how it is working later. So, it looks like real magic, they say, and any surface can be transformed and used. Look, you are the graduator of YEP, and you can tell what it was for you and about your further way, what was working, what was not. Because it's so important to analyze what is there and why it could be useful, because there can be lots of opportunities. They maybe sometimes are not timely and needed. So if you can, from this perspective, could you tell about this way, your way, and give your assessment and analysis to the existing opportunities? Thank you. I will tell in a nutshell what we are doing. Again, we are creating the device which allows any TV or projector to create a sensor screen, and it can be done at the educational institutions to provide workshops in the more interactive way and to involve the audience, or in the companies during the presentations and the meetings. How does it all take place? What was the way of the project? Everything began in a classic way with the idea. It was the school idea, school project, but after that our project went along all of the stages of the ecosystem in Ukraine, almost all of them. We began with a startup school, then those were grants. So those were not investments, this was the grant project to develop it. Then we got funding from, for instance, now we get the funding from Usaid to get to the external markets. And then we had acceleration in YEP. So in fact, all of the opportunities in Ukraine in this ecosystem emerged when we needed them. Because if I remember what used to be 2-3 years ago, it seems to me then it was more complicated to develop your startup than we could do it now. Because now you can choose from the bigger number of funds, some angel investors in Ukraine, who to come to, where to involve money from, where to get assistance from for the development of the product or the startup. Now we have all of that, and there are even more opportunities than they are needed, more than startups maybe. And as for the acceleration in YEP, it was also a very timely thing. We had a product, we began to sell it, but there was the task to scale up the project. And YEP helped because we got with distribution. The physical product was already there, but we needed it to achieve the client, and it was not bought directly. YEP helped us with that. We met the people who are experts in that. But I personally didn't have their contacts, so the ecosystem is helping with that, and it really looks like what's going on in Taiwan. Why Taiwan? Because thanks to UVCA, we got to CES in the US. In the US, we found the contacts with Taiwan, which is the state organizations which provides the soft landing program with the startups. 2 months ago, I came back from Taiwan, and they also have a very high-quality ecosystem of the assistance to the both external and internal startups from the state, and the whole cluster of private investors, the state, the private investors, state programs, all of that is at the same place. Everybody knows each other and helping each other. It seems to me that Ukraine is moving in this direction rather quickly and developing. I thought about what was lacking. I wouldn't say that something is lacking. I think the only thing which I lack may be the atmosphere, but it is changing. The atmosphere and the scale which we are thinking with. Because, for instance, there are investments, there are accelerators, but they won't create the startup itself. They won't create the product. So we need to think in a different way. We need to scale up even the thinking. And then the projects and the products will be much more interesting. That's interesting that you mentioned about that, because during the first panel discussion, Yaroslav from PetCube said that we need to keep the high level of ambitions. And maybe this is one of the tasks which in the future, during the following periods of ecosystem, will be involved for all of the participants of the ecosystem to support the high level of ambitions. You've mentioned that you went to Las Vegas, to CES, and also you were in the delegation at Startup Grind last year at the Silicon Valley. What was interesting for you there? Could you share? I'd tell that it was a very important experience. That's about ambitions and the understanding. I will mention my own story. Yes, that's what we're interested in, your own. So when I went there to CES, we had the idea that what we need for the development of the product. We also always developed it for our own money, for smaller grants, the main funding from the customers, what we got. And we didn't have the problem with the investments. We thought that we could have 100, 200,000 to develop the product quickly. When I came to CES and then communicated with the people during the networking who told about their projects and what tasks they're having, I understood that they have a different thinking. There was a guy there, they created the product which would allow to take the picture of the garbage and to make the San Francisco communal services aware that it needs to be cleaned. So they attracted 500,000 or 1 million, and we attracted 100,000 creating the product. I understood that we needed to scale up the thinking. So after that, I began to get interested with the startups in the US, in Europe, in the world, to read the news and to keep it ongoing. Then you understand that the level where you saw the world was not even the regional one, but it's the world one, which would allow you to look and to understand, even to change your attitude. Yes, maybe that's why at the history lessons, we shouldn't only study what used to be 1,000 years ago, but also to tell what really is happening in the world now. Not to print it out in the textbooks, but to tell it now. Because it's important. Because the world is developing and so quickly, because 100 years ago we could look at the indicators what will happen later. Now we need to tell what is happening now. You know, my 10-year-old daughter told that she wants to get acquainted with Sophia the robot, and they know more than we think because they have the open access to information, and it gives us hopes that everything will be moving and developing much quicker. Coming back to Taiwan and coming back to Pavlo. Pavlo, which other ideas do you have? Could you open some secrets for us? The ideas, well, I'd like to add to the previous speeches and to tell that, in fact, the startups are telling what will happen in 100 years, and we can see it now considering the applications. There are lots of ideas, but we are so diverse. We don't have any restrictions as for industries, so we are taking the most interesting applications. The latest which got to me was the flying printer. So now it seems to be unthinkable, but we do hope, yes, a space technology, but we do hope that in 5 or 10 years it will become reality. So we do hope that we will get more ideas, but those ideas shouldn't be just ideas, but the potential business as well. Well, but now we are not speaking about startups only, but what you could use in your services. Maybe someone from the state, like Taiwan, right? Who provides some soft lending services. Is this idea perceived for the startups who get to know something, for them to share such opportunities with you? Is there some platform where you can communicate what lacks in the ecosystem? In fact, we're getting a big number of applications from the startups as well. For instance, 2 or 3 weeks ago, I communicated with the guys from a startup which gave us 7 recommendations how our grant program should be changed. We can see totally different remarks, and we are getting feedback not only from the experts, not only from our potential investors, but also directly from the applicants. We're also actively developing our international partners. We have other international funds among the partners. As of today, we are actively communicating with the Japanese corporations. Just recently, we visited the similar fund in Dubai. There are several ideas. They are so far just emerging, but gradually we will announce about the outcomes. In fact, we've got lots of applications. We cannot just cover everything, but step by step, we are implementing certain ideas. We don't have only memorandums. We are not hiding behind them, but we are implementing certain ideas in life. So I think that our platform will be the one which will be able to implement any ideas. We are ready for the dialogue. We've already implemented several startups and offered to think on their services to be implemented through our platform. As for the ideas, we're also actively communicating with other funds, in particular the Ukrainian Cultural Fund, the National Fund of Research, to implement them into our system as well, and for those fundamental research, scientific ones, to become businesses one day. Science and business should have certain synergy. So you're not on your own who are promoted, you're also disseminating this experience for other funds, state funds, which can also become better and provide their services better. Yes, every fund has its own focus, their own peculiarities, but where we can communicate, we are doing that as it will give the maximum of synergy. Super, this is the proper thing. Thank you so much for that. I would like to ask Alexander now, how can we increase the number of the corporates who will communicate with the startups, with the ecosystem? What's your opinion? Should we disseminate the positive experience? Can we get them? Who can initiate such a dialogue? Everything is coming from within, from the middle. The corporation, the company can achieve it with different ways. The first way is the instinct of self-preservation. You can deal in the sphere where you begin the transformation before you finalize the activities. This will be the matter of their existence. Yes, this is the famous phrase, innovate or die. Yes, right. So you can wait for a long time for that. Secondly, those are the people. The people who are thinking differently. They're emerging in these companies, how they're coming as the consultants, as the experts, the development managers. It doesn't matter what their position is. They can let the CEOs or the owners be aware who can become the political sponsors. This is not the money issue, this is the politics. As the innovations for the startup, the innovation for the corporation is the totally different psychological way. For the startup, this is the creativity process, especially while the fund is giving the money. And this is the way highlighted with this is the euphoria state. If it is working, you're going along this red carpet, you're feeling happiness, and I don't know, some feelings which can be compared with very positive impact. But as for the cooperation and innovation, it's always an issue whether this is a destruction process, the destruction of older dogmas and rules, the processes, the innovations of the which will lead to the implementation of the new business processes, new competences, new organizational structure, the new thinking model. So the implementation of the innovations for the corporation is always a threat. The person who is doing that in the corporation is named kamikaze, as for the majority of the corporation, it is the threat. By different research, up to 13% of the people in the company are ready to take part in the innovations. All the rest are either passively totally opposed to that or actively opposed through sabotage and so on. So the way of the innovation launch is very complicated. The people who are doing that are feeling a high level of stress. They need to take into account lots of factors, political ones and sociological ones. But of course, they need money. They need funding. They need to be responsible for the failure or success with their position, with their reputation. So they have the same level, but your way is still the different one, the way of constant stress. So those people need to be in the company who know how to do that, who want to do that, and who are ready to do that, for whom it's really the idea for the sake of which they are ready to tolerate a lot, to be patient, because this way into the corporation is a very complicated, hard and long way. That's why we can see lots of cases when someone is announcing about the launch of some corporate incubator and then it fails. They opened the department of some digital transformation and more PR, but it's not working because they have a totally different way, which is very hard. It is the way through disruption, and this disruption has to be done by the people at the highest level. In the end of the day, they will be disrupted as well, because their need won't be in this role anymore. They would be either reborn in a different role or they should move on. So for the corporation, it's a very hard way. So to have more corporations like that, there are only two ways. Either there should be the people who are capable to take this role, or the corporation will be at the same level. Either you change or you die. Well, look, the way is unavoidable. We do understand that everything is developing so dynamically that people are thinking 100 years ahead, and we do understand the state of some different industries of ours and their friendship or not friendship with the technologies. So what the Ministry of Digital Transformation emerged is a very nice political signal, and that such CTOs, the people who are responsible for the technological changes in some industries, appeared, is a nice signal as well. And in fact, the corporations where they have the wish to change something, they will be able to find the information how to do it properly. They can share their experience of some success cases, and those success cases will help to scale up those ideas, those changes, in spite of their being painful. So we will hope that this process is launched both at the political level, it is supported already, and we will be able to involve other industries in this high-scale digitalization and the use of technologies. Several times we've heard, and Olena has mentioned, and Andriy as well, and Pavlo, that during the last 2 years everything has changed dramatically. There were lots of new opportunities, accelerators and incubators emerging, the grant programs. What then? Do we need to keep the trend? Or we need to add something to it? Or we need, in your opinion, how does the every member of ecosystem need to act? Because we, as the representative of the donors, that our task is to support some other players and drivers, the participants of the ecosystem, because our programs are temporary. We are there to add some foreign expertise and competence. But your task as the local driver is to sustainably move on with that. What's the opinion of yours, knowing that in 2 years we've achieved a lot? What then? What are the recipes or recommendations? Because with Andriy, when we created this panel, we wanted to hear the real practical insights and recommendations. Even if they came now, when you delved into and thought about that, let those be just the first ideas. Well, if I may, what occurs to me, we can see that there is the lack of coordination between the stakeholders. There is the Ministry of the Digital Transformation, which is the driver of all of the processes in the ecosystem. There are some implementing agencies, and the fund is one of them. And we can see that there is the necessity to unite all the stakeholders, to unite and to define the common priorities and to implement them together. Because if there are 5 investors and each of them has its own strategy, then when we have 5 funds or foundations which would fund the same industries. A very easy example, the funding of startups by Usaid and the funding of startups by our foundation. We can see that there is the necessity in the coordination, because rather often the same startup gives the applications to submits applications to different foundations and gets funding. So it seems to me that we need to develop common mechanisms, the co-investment mechanisms, and it will allow to save time, and secondly, to strengthen the synergy. The startup will get doubled money and to have double financing and to expand their impact. We had the examples when the startup submitted the application and got the approval and also came through all of the procedures at our place. It was the first case when we saw that, in fact, it could take place. And we are trying to involve as many partners as possible for the common ideas, not to duplicate the functions. If we can see that someone is implementing these or that initiatives, we are trying to be the partners. We'll create the partnership relations with everybody, with all the stakeholders, in spite of us being a state fund. And this synergy, as it seems to me, has the maximum impact. I totally agree with you. We will coordinate, of course, and we do invite everybody. Andriy, can you add anything? Yes, I will. Well, it's not that easy to add anything after your speech, but it seems to me that we need more partnerships between the stakeholders, because if the startup is coming to Usaid, and you understand that this is not your profile and you cannot invest it, either it's too early or it's too late, then you can say that it is. But if you worked in the closer ecosystem, you could bring it to the door where it can get help. And when it is synchronized, it will speed up the development of the startups, and maybe it would be much more efficient. And also, it seems to me, we are all speaking about the startups, but startup sounds really cool and bright. This is the red carpet, the light, but we need to tell more how we can create business. Because I read about such an example which I liked. If you've never done business and never earned money, but you want to create a startup, this is the same when you came to the gym and you want to become a heavyweight. Because it sounds cool, but for that you need to understand how it is working. So it seems to me that if you develop the prestigious character of entrepreneurship, not only of startups, it will lead to more results. Because someone will create the startup, someone will create the business with 10 employees, and 3 of them will create the startup. So let us develop the entrepreneurship as well. I totally agree with that. Thank you so much that you mentioned that. Because in fact, when they launched the State Startup Fund, the Cabinet of Ministers had to learn what startup is. And it was not easy even to provide the proper name, because they wanted to make it properly, but it was not working. So startup is an interesting, but it is the same entrepreneurship, right? It is the same. And the course which we launched and supported the launch in YAP of innovative management in the university is for the development of entrepreneurship. So such programs should be much more numerous. I welcome the initiative of the Ministry of Digital Transformation about the transformation of the Office on Export Promotion into the Office of the Development of Entrepreneurship and Export. Because this is the entrepreneurship which gradually can achieve external markets and export. So this is very important to emphasize that entrepreneurship in its essence is the main thing, and then it can develop in different directions. Thank you so much for such a remark, for this emphasis. And it sounds even more convincing for our viewers from the startupper, because you know what you do. Do we have Olena with us to give her the last word? Okay, Olena, you have the opportunity to say something which would be a very quick one, because we've got only 1 minute left, but still, please. You're helping the entrepreneurs to develop, right? You took part in our program for women's entrepreneurship, and thank you for that. I would like to add to the previous issue, to the previous point, out of the classical recommendations to tell what we need to develop the entrepreneurship culture in Ukraine. We need to really look at the current school children and students, the new generations, which are not Generation Z already, but even younger, because they are not that engaged from the Soviet times, which can be seen in the Generation Z, because we were brought up by the parents who heard that entrepreneurship is not that nice. So they did not have the entrepreneurial way of thinking themselves. So unfortunately it was not fair, and we are a bit of infected by that as well. But the younger people are very pragmatic, and what I like, and they try to use all the skills they are having. I think that we really need to emphasize on that, not only to tell the theory, what is happening in the world with the technologies, but also to emphasize on the practical sessions where they have an opportunity to create their own project in the team and to play as a startup in the university or maybe at school. I know, according to my own experience, that when you created several projects on your own or in some team, you do understand that in fact you can do a lot more. And it's a kind of brain changer. it changes the way of thinking. It witnesses that you can do something and you can earn money with that. So if I can look into the future, I would say that to strengthen our technological sphere and to provide its further development, we need to look at the school children and the students. Thank you so much. It was working. It was very quick, but it was working. You even emphasized on a different aspect. So let us develop entrepreneurship beginning with the school children. Thank you so much. Unfortunately, we need to say goodbye to you, and let us conclude and finalize. I would like only to state the fact that the Ukrainian ecosystem of the entrepreneurship development and innovations and startups took place. Maybe it's a bit too loud to say, but still we decided to achieve the higher thresholds and to have higher ambitions. So thank you everyone for the participants. Thank you that you joined us, and we will work on the better communication, better coordination, and for the youth to deal with entrepreneurship more. See you soon. Good day. We are happy to be today at the conference which is devoted to the development of entrepreneurship in the universities. We will now come to the next panel discussion, but before that I'd like to introduce and to give the floor to the Minister of Digital Transformation, the Vice Prime Minister of Ukraine, Mr. Mikhailo Fedorov. So far he is joining us. I will introduce the participants of our discussion. So today with us we have Mr. Charles Whitehead, the co-founder of EO Business Incubators, Artem Kopanev, the Deputy Operational Director of Genesis, hello, Ksenia Semenova, the Head of Communications of YEP, and Dmytro Shvets, the co-founder of Incubator CEO Start Global, hello. And also online we are having Volodymyr Statsenko, who is the teacher at Dnipro National University, named after Honchar. CEO warmed well. So today we will be speaking a lot about how we can develop entrepreneurship in the universities. What are the best international practices which Ukraine could study, which it could adapt and adjust? Which exactly results do we have in several years? So it would be a very interesting discussion. I'm happy to have such a company today. So I'm waiting to speak about that as well. So, while we are waiting for the Minister of Digital Transformation, I would say that each of the participants of our panel discussion could say a couple of words about the importance of the development of entrepreneurship and ecosystem of entrepreneurship in the universities. Please, Artem, if you'd like, you could begin. Hello. I sincerely consider that the support of entrepreneurship in the universities and the support of the students is the incredibly important task of any quickly developing company, including Genesis. We are paying a lot of attention to that, launching our IT school, which included 8 graduations and more than 100 graduates who are working in the company. And this is also the development of the skills among the students with the help of the webinars we are conducting in the universities, the cooperation with the student organizations, professional organizations, and support and development of cooperation with the organizations which impact the skills and experience of funding of startups in Ukraine and Ukrainian universities. I really consider that during the last 5 years there have been a lot of work done, and the students now understand much better what they need to work in their life, to create the startup, and what they need to become the outstanding entrepreneurs. Like our mission, we are creating businesses with the outstanding entrepreneurs which change the lives of millions of people. That is why I consider that the support of the student startups and lots of entrepreneurs have the experience of students' years they have the third or the fourth successful business already, but the business which they launched during the students' years provides them with huge experience and contacts for their following next business, if the first was a failure, for the next business to take place and to bring them joy and earnings. Thank you, Artem. Ksenia? Yes, thank you. Could you show my presentation, please? Okay, then I will begin that YEP considers the university as the core of the innovations and the startup movement of entrepreneurship in Ukraine. Today we already managed to mention our initiative, Entrepreneurial University. I will tell in a nutshell what that is. Entrepreneurial University is about the development of entrepreneurship and achieving the high quality new level and founding of the trend among the youth to create startups. In simple words, we create entrepreneurial university in Ukraine. What does this initiative include? We began with the implementation at the universities, the official curricular course on the management of innovative entrepreneurship. Then we are adding Startup Campus platform online, where all of the students will be able to communicate with each other and with the mentors, with the potential investors. Among those who will be at this platform of Startup Campus, there will be the contest, the competition, Startup Campus League, a big all-Ukrainian festival. And what's important, we need to give those students to the ecosystem with lots of incubators, accelerators, networking with business partners, not only in Ukraine, but globally all over the world. The course of innovative entrepreneurship, to be more detailed, is totally integrated into the education system. We don't need to invent anything new. Those are the same lectures and the same schedule of sessions. It's not auxiliary. The students can take it as a main course. They get the assessment, and during this course they create their own startup in the where they don't have the thesis, but they have a startup project. We have the ready materials for the teachers and students, so the teacher is also very confident, even if he or she hadn't had some experience like that. And we also, with the whole teachers, we created boot camps for the teachers. We are working with them, we're taking their feedback, we have support chats. Yeah, so they can prompt something. So this is a kind of cooperation between us. Now we have 29 cities, 76 universities. We are working with 129 teachers, and we had almost 4,000 students in this course. We're also collecting feedback from the students and the teachers. Both the teachers and the students are assessing and valuing this course because it's rather interesting and comprehensible. We are assessing each topic, and if we can see that some topic was not that understandable, we adapt ourselves, we change ourselves. So the project of Entrepreneurial Institute is our own startup. And strategically, we're not planning to stop at this course of entrepreneurial management of innovative projects. We are planning to work with the innovative managers at the universities. First of all, those are rectors and deans on innovations, on transfer of technologies. We can create the entrepreneurship centers, and if we need some changes in the legislation, we will work on that as well. We will communicate and cooperate with the state for the Ukrainian universities to become entrepreneurial. And the slide which already was mentioned, it's all about changing mindsets and thinking. It's not about certain tools and specific tools, but about to be custom. Thank you, Ksenia. And now we have the Minister of Digital Transformation, the Vice Prime Minister of Ukraine, Mikhailo Fedorov, in touch with us. Mikhailo, hello. We were waiting for you for so long. I would like to ask you to tell a bit what is done by our ministry, the Ministry of Digital Transformation, in the project of Dear Business and the project Dear for the development of entrepreneurship, in particular the youth entrepreneurship in Ukraine.
Да, всім доброго дня. Прошу пробачення за зміну часу мого виступу. Я думаю, що сьогодні вже Валерія точно вам розповідала про Дія Бізнес. Цього не можна
Well, of course you spoke about that, but I will tell again what we are doing and a bit more about our philosophy, our vision, what we'd like to create in Ukraine, what you're creating, and how we'll go on creating the country of entrepreneurs here. We have an interesting statistical data. We have more than 70% of people working at the ministry, the people who used to work in the business, so we're dealing with their own business. Almost all of the deputies are the people who came from business, so we may say that in our ministry we have a very entrepreneurial atmosphere and culture. So we don't look like bureaucrats who were working for 50 years at the state, and we are creating the products from the entrepreneurship perspective, which are similar to what you're doing. We're launching some prototypes, MVPs, we are searching for partners, searching for investments, the projects, we're calculating what could be ROI, return on investment, and we'd like our country to have more entrepreneurs. It's not even the aim of our ministry, it's our mission, it's more than our aim. Whatever we do, the convenient, the digital state, is for our country to be convenient, for the business to work, and to have more entrepreneurs, and for people to work, and to improve the social welfare of all of the Ukrainians, because business is the core for the economy of Ukraine. So we'll do everything possible for us to create the country of entrepreneurs. As of today, we created a little model which could look like a perfect model, which would be cool to scale up all over the country. If you'd like to open your own business, or you had such an idea, you can get to the portal of Dia Business. Valeria is responsible for this project and it's successfully developing, and you can get any consultation, any counseling in any idea about the business, how it can be open, how you can find the business, find the team, how to work with the organizational structure. You can find this answer at the portal as the content, or the opportunity to get the free consultation. The practitioners are working there, the people who understand their issues, and each of the Ukrainians can get the service for free. That is the consultation how to open and to conduct your own business. There's lots of interesting content at the portal about the success cases. There are some articles and interviews and calculated business models and free training courses which could help even the school child to consider what the business is, and the student as well, and the person who is doing business already. So this is a kind of an online ecosystem which has the answers for all of the questions if you think about your own business. And also we'd like to achieve every far and distant corner of our country, and we create offline centers, business centers in Kharkiv, Mykolaiv, Kyiv, attached to the university, and Cherkasy city, and this year we'll open much more of them. Valeria will tell about that, I guess, or maybe she has already told about that. So we would like the state to provide the free service and to improve the quality of this service, like consultancy and the help for the entrepreneurs. So how the ecosystem is working: if you'd like to open your own business, you have an idea, you can get to Dear Business and you will get help. If you need money and you understand that you need additional funding investments, you can get to the fund of startups. And as of today, Startup Fund has become the biggest angel investor in 2020. This is the cool developing project. When you got the money, you go on developing, you create the business model, you have the people, and for that you have the e-services which can help. We launched the sole propriety opening. This is the quickest way to open your business in the world in 7 to 15 minutes. And in April we are launching the automatic registration of the business without the participants of the state officials. It will be fantastic. The registrators won't have any errors and mistakes. You will be able to register your business without the participants of people. This is really cool. And also in April we are launching the tax paying India for the sole proprietors with a simplified system. The bigger companies can have the expert accounting departments and they don't have any issues. But when we speak about the beginner, about the sole proprietor, at the first stage there can be certain problems to give the tax declaration, the timely or the filling it in properly. There can be some fine. So when I began my business with the sole proprietor status, I had some problems. That is why the today's fight and the victory on the declaration, tax declaration, is my personal victory for me and a challenge to the system that there used to be such an issue and we solved it. Then you develop actively and you can also get to the business. You can get consultations in marketing, consultancy from the HR point of view, so you can further develop your business and get to it. When you understand that you are developing already, you've got 9 and more employees, you will be able to develop your own business in Dia City. I do hope that in spring we'll finalize and adopt the law and it will be working since August or September. Dia City is the best taxation system for creative companies in our country. In fact, we take the system of tax payment of the third group of sole proprietors and there is an opportunity to use this system for the company. So at the companies, you will pay only 5% of taxation. This is 3 times lower than the today's taxation system. This is one of the best liberalization system. We do hope that it will be adopted. The MPs will vote for that. And then for the product companies, it will be the best system ever and the best conditions ever. But then you develop your business, you're becoming a happy person, you're not communicating with the state that much, and if you need this communication, you do it with the app Dia or the portal with several clicks. But now we need to think about our younger generation, and the pilot project which the universities had at the beginning of the work with the schools, with the school children, is already the very important mission. We need to implement it together with the business. We need to change the mindset of our school children and students beginning with the early age. We need to change their thinking and mindset. We need to sell the business in a different way. We should embed new senses into younger minds, the new ways of the development for the future, the new life trajectories. That is why the project which we, together with our partners, with you, we have launched at the universities, I can see certain outcomes and they inspire me to do everything possible for it to be a compulsory subject at the higher educational institutions at schools. And we are working on that. I am sure that it will change altogether the way of thinking, the mindset of our children, school children, students. It will become the foundation for the country of entrepreneurs, because the business is first of all about our mindset, about how we are ready to the risks, how we are ready to create and fail, to create and fail, and to create again. And so we need to have this proper skill of failing, to make the proper conclusions after each failure, for it to become, for the younger generation, not a failure, for it to become the reason to be proud of. Because the more mistakes you have, the more you understand how to move properly and how to be efficient. So we need to change the mindset. We need to popularize the entrepreneurship as much as possible. From our behalf, we are ready to do everything possible for them, and the Ministry of Education is helping us. But for the government to take certain decisions, for the parliament to take certain decisions. And when we make such subjects at schools and universities in a systematic way, in the constant way, I may say that the ecosystem will be, to a certain extent, totally properly created. I think that Dia City and Dia Business, the interaction of those projects and the weight of those projects is further on won't give an opportunity to make the taxation system in our country inconvenient for the development of the business with too high taxes. I do hope that our country, after the launch and the development of those projects, will create the best taxation system in the world. That's our dream, and I think that this is one of the fundamental issues the complicated character of the today's taxation system, because the entrepreneurship should develop quicker, but it could develop even more quicker thanks to the solution of those issues. Thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for helping the startups to develop, to find younger people. Thank you, our team, which is developing Dear Business. We can be definitely proud that we are living in Ukraine, we are working, we are investing a lot already into the development of our country, and we will create the country of entrepreneurs together. Thank you. Thank you, Mikhailo, that you found some time to join us. Thank you for such an inspiring speech. You told about all of the projects. I don't even know what I should speak about, but in fact, really, this was a very inspiring speech, and in spite of us working together, closer to each other, every time I'm inspired even more and more, and every time I can see more sense in that. I think that my colleagues as well. So we'll let you go now. Thank you so much. We're going on with our work. Thank you, everybody. Have a good and productive day. Goodbye. So we are coming back to our discussion, and if we may, let's finalize the presentation topics. Dmitro, please, the floor is yours. Thank you so much. If I may, could you show my several slides of the presentation at the screen? I would like, from the one side, I'd like to share the previous speeches and to support the. On the one hand, I share the enthusiasm which was just mentioned by the minister and all the projects which we are conducting now, but for 3 years we are trying to create the ecosystem of entrepreneurship in Ukraine, and it is done by the enthusiasts. It's a kind of a missionary activity which invests its time into it, and we can see lots of challenges there. So I will tell about the challenges we are facing a bit, and then a bit about the solutions for those challenges. When we were planning and creating the incubator, we traveled along the world and we looked how it was working. We were inspired by Swedish practices. I had some education in Sweden for several times. I had some contacts in the universities and investment companies and centers of entrepreneurship and innovations. And what I saw there was just space. It was science fiction for me. It should work, and it should work here. Unfortunately, when I came back with those ideas to Ukraine, we faced the situation that this will not be working in this way. Not a single approach to the ecosystem which is working now with the developed countries will not be working here because we don't have the well-developed ecosystem. So the first challenge I'd like to mention, we don't have entrepreneurship. We don't have the culture of entrepreneurship. We don't have the demand for entrepreneurship. What we can see the statistical data of the sole proprietors, and it does not reflect the real statistical data of entrepreneurs. So we don't have entrepreneurs, we don't have such a market, we don't have this fashion for entrepreneurship. If the person wants to do something, graduates from the university and thinks how to earn money working for someone, not for himself or herself. So this is the issue which we faced when we said that we have the product, we know how to train you, what to give to you, and for the students it's almost for free, but there is no one to give it to. No one is coming. The second topic, or the point, we don't have the culture of investments. People that haven't get used to invest. They invest into the bricks. I mean, to buy an apartment and then to resell it or to rent it. So to lease it. That's why we don't have angel investments. We don't have the first money which can the interpreters can get. The entrepreneurs can get. Then about the universities. In the majority of cases, there are some exclusions, but mostly the universities are dinosaurs which don't want to change. And there is a huge gap between what the universities provide and what the real world provides. And the way of our pupil or our student is the following. I graduate from the university, what I can do? Either my business or to work for someone. And when we speak about the entrepreneurship, we're also speaking about the mindset thinking, which exists not only in your own business, but also in the whole company. What's named entrepreneurship, internal entrepreneurship. And the students lack those skills. What does the market do? What does Genesis do? Opens its own school. Yes, opens its own school. Because we lack the specialists, the experts. The business needs to invest into that. And it's cool. It's cool. I'm happy that such companies exist, but those are not universities. Those are the companies. So the universities need to change. Or there are some private programs like ours when we train with our own expense the students, but we wouldn't do that if it would be done, if it had been done by the universities. A huge issue, one more issue, when we traveled along the world, that we have globalization. What does it mean? Especially during the pandemics. It means that there are no borders. They vanished. For the training, for the work, for the jobs, and to go somewhere or to begin to work not in Ukraine. There is such statistical data which witnesses that Ukraine, it used to be in 2017, this research, that it is a net exporter of talent, because we are the leaders in the world on export of talents. And this is net export, because they are leaving, but nobody is coming back. We don't have this rotation, and we're losing that. And very often, the foreign incubators are coming to me, or venture funds are coming to me, and they say, give us the projects with the relocation. And this is the outflow of brains, the minds. The best people are leaving. We communicated with the Polish incubators. They said, we've got lots of money from European state funds, but we don't have anything to invest into. We're out of projects. Give us the projects, we will invest, but with the condition that this will be the Polish company. They have the priority. So far, we are refusing. We say, no, we have our own. Come to us, bring the money here and invest here. But for that, we need to change the legislation as well. And the last big issue, why we lack, one of the points, why we lack projects, bigger projects, because we lack money. No investments, no angels. As we don't have angels, we don't have ventures. We don't have ventures, we don't have private equity. We don't have the fund market. So we don't have the market of startups and reselling of the startups. So this is the same old question of chicken and egg. Because we don't have the ventures, we don't have the angels, because we don't have the substantial amount of projects. When you invest into 100, the one is working. But you need to have 100 of projects to invest into. We need to do something with that. What can we do? A nice question. In my opinion, the universities need to be the source for the entrepreneurs. This is the community with its own culture to bring up entrepreneurs. Well, in fact, what was mentioned by the previous speaker. Because they need to be a kind of the source, the creator of this fashion for investments. And a huge gratitude to Yep. I give you a bow, because we were trying to do the same. We wanted to go to the university and offer our assistance, but we didn't manage to make a deal. What Andriy and Yep created is the wonder, is the miracle. I do respect him for that, and we will support him for that, because he finally pushed this cliff, and it finally was working. Because they don't have any choice. Because of the globalization, the competition is not with the Ukrainian universities, not to get a diploma. And we know that Ukrainian youth is not just thinking about diplomas. They don't need it. I have 2 diplomas, even 3 ones of the Ukrainian education. I never used them. Only there was one case when I was working in the Ukrainian post office. In the beginning of my career, they asked me if I had a higher education diploma. They don't need it. We have the competition with Harvard, with Yale, with Usaid from Korea, with a huge number of universities where you can have the free course at Coursera. There is no lack of information. There is the lack of experience to overcome and to think with your own startup. That's what we need. So we need to promote success cases. We need to have our own Skype or our own Angry Birds. There are several of them, but it's a bit ridiculous, because the guys left, they registered in the US, they got the investments there, and they're living there. This is the American company, but with the Ukrainian founders. There are lots of similar projects, but it is cool at least like that. We need to support that, and each step for all of the young, and not only young entrepreneurs, we need to shout out the success cases exist. And also, we need to do it not only among ours, but abroad as well. When I say that mostly I earn the money to reinvest is the entrepreneurship, it's export consulting. I'm helping the companies to get abroad. So we are perceived abroad in a bad way. We need to shape our own image abroad thanks to such perfect unicorns cases. We will speak about that as well. And the last point I'd like to say, what can be done. I've just graduated from one more training in Sweden, and they said we should look at the benchmarking. I said that we should develop our own, not only to work at the world examples. As Shevchenko has said, the Ukrainian poet, we should study somebody's experience, but we shouldn't forget about our own. One of the graduates of our program on start of business, Andriy Lisovy, has launched the school when he was 17 years old. This is the preparation, the training for the final exam, the final test, where the students and the youth are teaching. He is teaching history, and he has the case, a wonderful case, which he shared with me. We had the situation, Kievan Rus, 1223, the battle of three Mstislavs with the Mongols at Kalka River. The Rus troops were approximately 100,000 people, and Mongols were 20,000, and we lost because Mstislavs, three different Mstislavs, couldn't make a deal. They wanted their own. And you do remember our proverb that each Cossack has three dukes or three hetmans. So the main point is to unite stakeholders. What we're doing now, this is an incredible step forward which can unite different people, because every single one of us is doing something in our own corner, but very often we are duplicating our actions. That is why we need to unite, to join each other, for it to be more efficient, and to create the ecosystem which will support each other. In Sweden, they have the same case. Let us speak about Sweden a bit later. Just one point, but we are short of time. Just one moment. We have the association of operators are in one association, and they own it. There is no competition. And the last point, there is Kaufman Foundation, which tells that there are 7 principles you need to develop to launch the ecosystem. Do you see the last point? Start, be patient. Thank you so much. And we have 2 more speakers online. That is Mr. Charles Whitehead. I would like to give the floor to Charles now, please. Hello. We are happy that you joined us.
Hello, thanks very much. And greetings from New York. I'm actually in a university, you can see. Really, when we're talking about universities, at the end of the day, this concern that I'm hearing from folks on the panel and generally in Ukraine is a concern we have in the United States, and that is, how do you integrate academia and faculty and universities with the broader ecosystem, with the startup community. And at the end of the day, it's really a question of making entrepreneurship and making the development of new business and commercializing technology, making it a core part of the academic mission. You can't think about academics on the one hand and business on the other. They really have to work hand in hand. Now, the concern that academics often have is that if we make entrepreneurship or commercialization a part of the academic mandate, that it will somehow dilute the academic mission. That scientists won't be scientists, that academics won't be as purely academics. And I have a 2-word answer for that: Stanford, MIT. In the United States, they are probably the most entrepreneurial of the universities. I tell my friends in Ukraine that when I'm on the Stanford campus, I probably run into more millionaires than I do on Wall Street. You don't think of academics separate and apart from commercialization. The way the Stanford mindset is, and actually the way the Cornell mindset is, I'm a professor at Cornell University, is that commercialization, really the idea of the social mandate associated with new technology. How do I make it useful to society? This becomes part of the DNA of the university. In the case of Cornell, for example, we have a campus down in New York City. I helped set it up. It's called Cornell Tech. And the way to think about it is Stanford is to Silicon Valley, Cornell Tech is to New York City. We invested over $1 billion into this university. It is an open architecture campus. And what that means is it's not just simply students sitting in a classroom. I mean, that's fine, and there's a value to this. But it's also students interacting with business people. In fact, on the campus, we have businesses. They're literally right across the way, the campus from where the students are studying. And the idea is to make the entrepreneurial experience, the commercialization, an inherent part of the education. And really, I think that's where Ukraine is moving. The different projects I'm hearing seem to support this, but it needs to be embraced by the universities themselves. It is the case, and this is true in the United States as well, that scientists and academics tend to not be very good entrepreneurs. They're really good at science. They're really good at research. They're not necessarily so good at commercialization. And so what one needs to have is an ecosystem around the universities that helps support the commercialization of the academic research, the science, the technology that's developed in the universities. It may be a shared set of resources. It may be something specific to the university. But for example, here at Cornell, if I had a little bit of a stronger arm, I'd be able to hit one of our incubators. We have 4 incubators here on campus, and they are there to support students. They are there to support faculty. They are funded by the university. They are supported by the faculty. I work closely with 2 of them. But again, the idea here is to embed within the university itself this idea of entrepreneurship. And it's with students, but it's also with academics, it's with scientists, and it's a support infrastructure around the science, around the technology, that helps make it easier for a researcher to commercialize the work that they're doing. Let me just mention a quick story to illustrate what I'm describing. When I was in Ukraine a few years ago, I met with one university, and these scientists had come up with an amazingly great technology to use heat to dry vegetables and meat as a way to preserve them and to keep the minerals and the vitamins inside the vegetables. And apparently this is the best heating technology around. And I spent some time talking to the scientists about this, and they were explaining why their technology was better than anything else around in terms of heating and minimizing cost. I asked them, I said, what about freeze drying? How do you compare to freeze drying? Your focus is on heat because they were heat specialists, but have you thought about how this might compare to cold, very fast freeze drying? And it had never occurred to them. The only reason it occurred to me is because I'm thinking about it more as an entrepreneur. I'm thinking about it in terms of a product, in terms of what can you commercialize. And to the extent that you're a scientist and you're trying to develop a technology or a product that you think will be socially useful, you're going to want to have this mindset as well. You may not necessarily be the one who commercializes it. Maybe you need people who are going to ask you these kinds of questions, but it goes again to the DNA, the heart of the academic mission. And to the extent it becomes embedded in the university, I actually think it makes the university and the science in the university that much more valuable. It's not taking away from the scientific mission, it's actually making the scientific mission a little bit more focused, and it's making the academics a little bit more focused. So at the end of the day, is this the sort of thing that academics will embrace? Not right away, but the sorts of efforts that I'm hearing in Ukraine, and certainly when I'm in Ukraine, my incubator, we are really based on this idea that there should be a way to commercialize technology and build businesses in Ukraine that stay in Ukraine. We don't want the export that you saw a few moments ago. We've been able to raise in the last 12 months roughly $3.2 million in grants and equity investments for companies that stay in Ukraine. One of them has an implied valuation now of over $20 million. And it's part of this idea, again, of trying to commercialize, build resources where you can keep the technology in Ukraine and you can expand upon the core mission in the case of universities, take the science, take the research, and turn it into a business, so a business that benefits Ukraine. So thanks very much. I'm happy to participate and look forward to the conversation after.
Дякуємо, дякуємо за те, що
Thank you so much that you joined us. And the last open remarks today is from Volodymyr. Volodymyr, hello, are you with us? Yes. So could you have not more than 5 minutes now, because we've got lots of questions left which we would like to discuss together. Hello everyone, I'm happy to see the acquainted faces. So what can I say? If we look to the past, we had several stages of the development. The first stage of the planned economy, it was a very interesting and rapid process. I do remember that there were some conversations about the business incubators, but the global crisis in the 90s did not let us to construct it. Still, we had some innovative entrepreneurs emerging at the market. It was not thanks to the process, but in spite of this process. And we also had some positive experience with the national manufacturers of the very well-known producers to decrease toxicity of the vehicles and the needs in the fuel. So now we were thinking to achieve world markets. But as for success cases, they are not that numerous, considering the huge scientific and technical potential which Ukraine used to have and is still having now. Now, we have the most powerful stage of the development of startup ecosystem when our innovators are having full access to the information of the world innovation market. We really felt the lack of this information in the past. This is a very important step to begin the cooperation with the scientific community, the teachers, and the real economy sector. Our physical technical faculty of the university has certain traditions. We create the stuff for the missile and rocket space technology. Lots of our gratitudes have the experience of entrepreneurship activity. And they founded their own startups. We had the course with the topic of security and created several startups. Some of them took part in the competitions, and we created a little report at the local TV, which I'd like to show you now, if we have such an opportunity. The space technologies for the energy-efficient winterization of the apartments in the finals of the contents, and it won as the startup Warm Walls of Dnipro National University, named after Vitaly Goncharook. The teachers have developed it for 2 years. This is the gallium profile, which is used as a building material or the material for fencing. It is done with aluminium. Here we have the heat carrier, and the whole roof is transformed into the big solar collector. This is the helio collector with for the roof. Those are the boxes which are covered with the transparent surface, and there is this solar energy collector. We have the water or any other heat carrier, and we have the hot tub water with the help of the solar energy. The energy issue is so important, and solution of these problems which allow to decrease the CO2 emissions into the atmosphere. And what's important to mention in the projects which were presented by our colleagues, that here the cooperation was between the two specialties, the energy sector, which is developing in our scientific research Research Institute of Energy, and the experts of Physical Technical Faculty. So we glue our photo elements here, and we get the solar panel, which really looks like this one of the real satellite. This is the satellite Ocean, and they have the same elements, which are either closing the sofa, covering the surface, or at the different. So they have the similar elements, galvanic elements. The second project, which the students were working on, achieved the semi-final. So their development is connected with the Ukrainian students. They wanted to select the weaknesses according to their own experience. I'm communicating with the students so much, so I know their pain, our Ukrainian students. We would create the call center of the taxi drivers network, the interactive boards, and the personal card of the university to unite all of that together and for our university to be more attractive. The way of the students' project for the participants in the competition is not finalized. To implement that, they are conducting negotiations with the administrations of the educational institutions. The warm walls went on. The startup achieved the market. According to our calculations, optimistic calculations, the payback period will be 3 years. Our project is creating for everybody. So, the news of the 9th channel. Thank you. That was a cool motivation video. Thank you, Volodymyr. And now we are coming to the panel discussion. I do apologize, we are really short of time. We'll come back to you again. Let us begin the discussion, please. Dear colleagues, we have only 15 minutes left, so that is why I'd like this discussion to be as dynamic as possible. Short questions, short answers, because now we'd like to discuss a bit, to debate. According to the statistical data of 1218, the average age of the entrepreneur is 45 years for males and 43 years for women, and the young are only not that numerous. The 3 reasons why they're not that numerous, please. Why don't we have that many young entrepreneurs? Well, because the beginning stage of the development of students' entrepreneurship is not that nice. Because if we look at the dynamics, it is decreasing, thanks to the corporate programs, which provide the knowledge to the students from the perspective of the entrepreneurship, and thanks to the YEP program, which is very relevant to create your own business. So I think that it's only the issue of time when the layer of our entrepreneurs is becoming younger and will scale up their startups for Ukraine and the whole world. Thank you. Any other answers? I think the fear and the lack of experience among young people, among the students, and the stereotypical perception of the society that it's better to choose stability, to work in IT, they have $800 a month and more, and when you earn enough you can open your startup. This is a cliche and the students use it so often. Dmitro, in a nutshell, please. Well, I'm thinking, how can I do that in a nutshell? As I told, there is no fashion. It's not cool. The culture, yes. Thank you, Volodymyr. Charles, maybe you'd like to answer? Let us know.
If I can, yeah, it's also because young people don't understand that this is real. For them, this is a television series. It's something they see in the movies. And they don't realize that there is real money and real investment interest in smart minds, regardless of where they're located.
Окей, дякуємо. Володимире, чи хочете щось сказати?
Volodymyr, would you like to add anything? In a nutshell, please. In the beginning of the semester, we had some misunderstanding why we train for startups and what does it have in common for our specialty. But after the course, after the internal thesis, lots of students are planning to develop their business, and they feel themselves confident in their own strength to develop their own technical projects. One more issue, not that many cases of relationship between the academics and businessmen in Ukraine. There are lots of relations which were not that nice. They have only low trust for our system of intellectual property protection, and we try to shape some positive experience. Not that many people were hoping that it is possible in Ukraine. Okay, thank you. Let us have the short answers, please, now. Okay, we got it. So, you spoke about the culture of the development of entrepreneurship and the training programs, the curricula, and also we did understand that there is the development thanks to YEP and other similar projects like Entrepreneurial University. It's so important to have the proper cool curriculum, to have proper teachers. Then there is the question, how can we keep the curriculum flexible? Because the world is dynamically changing, and when we speak about entrepreneurship, in spite of certain fundamentals and basics, there are certain spheres like marketing, sales, HR, even finances, fintech, which are totally changing. So how can we create the curriculum for the universities flexible? This is the question number one. And the question number two, how can we create the systematic training of the teachers for them to be ready to train and to teach such programs? I think that answering your first question, I'd say that we should involve practitioners, because the practitioners always understand what is happening, because this is their money. Either they understand and earn money, or they don't understand and then they are not practitioners. They just do something else. Sorry to interrupt, but to involve practitioners is cool. It is happening in lots of projects, including Entrepreneurial Institute, but it doesn't mean that the curriculum is becoming flexible enough. So those are the invited speakers who can read certain lectures. This is not the answer, the question. How can we make the curriculum flexible for certain modules to embed some changes? Are there any ideas? Let us brainstorm. So from the perspective of the ministry, no, methodologically. Yes, I've got some ideas. We are creating the flexible program, and what we've done from abroad, we took the idea from abroad. When we develop a curriculum, we have a certain framework. First of all, it's experience, not knowledge, but experience. When you come and do your own way, and the program is shaped additionally after we have the pool of projects. The people are coming with their projects, we're looking through them, which needs they have, which mentors we need, and in this skeleton, in this backbone, we involve the speakers, not even the speakers, but consultants, and we reflect on what you've done, and this is how we create a very flexible curriculum. A cool idea, but they give you the ready projects. But in the entrepreneurial institutes, people don't have the ideas, and the idea is being born in the process. It's okay, the first module is the birth of the idea, and this is the procedure and the methodology of the birth of the idea. But then they have the idea. The university or the curriculum must have lots of resources which needs to be involved as quick as possible. Do we have any other answers? Could I share? We instantly decided to make a task to cover as many students as possible, because if we want to change the mindset, to change the society as it is, it should be a very massive thing. So we need to work with the universities, because whatever it takes, the graduates from the schools are going to the university, not finding jobs. And then the question of the teachers. There are not that many startups and venture funds in Ukraine, and they don't have that many spare time to become teachers, to provide 5 or 10 hours a day to train. So we train the trainers. What allows the program to be flexible is that we totally challenge it. All the time we challenge it. We get the feedback from the students, from the teachers. It is so important for the course to be practical, to be comprehensible, for the students to use them here and now, and we get the feedback from the entrepreneurs, from the funds, which assess what has been working at our students. We understand whether that course was relevant or not that much, and what needs to be adjusted. Okay, cool, thank you. But how could you see the perfect way, the perfect journey of the student who so far doesn't have an idea but wants to know how to become an entrepreneur? Has the certain course at the university, what should go on after that? What would be the perfect way, the perfect ecosystem which we could implement in Ukraine? Okay, let me try. The student must have an opportunity to choose. Not everybody can become an entrepreneur. So we'd like every student to have an opportunity to try. If he or she tries and likes that, then needs to try and to select which accelerator to choose, which incubator to choose. There shouldn't be any issues to provide scientific research. That's why she has the university, the laboratory. Do we have enough of accelerators in Ukraine? No. We need to develop it, not only in Ukraine, in the world as well. We need to take part in the world programs, which are done online. They can apply for any incubator in the world. Of course, we'd like Ukraine to have more incubators like that. It would be pleasant to have competition. Thank you. Artem, Dmitro, would you like to comment? Artem? Please, you. Okay, a very cool idea to try. And I think this is the core. We need to do something, not just to have a curriculum, but to try with your own hands, to make it tangible, to be an entrepreneur. And for that, you should have an opportunity. For instance, in the Netherlands, in the incubators, they have an approach of launching customers. When the companies have the partners of incubators, and they say, do something, and we will be your first customer. So you can test your idea on us. And secondly, the funding. To give money to try. This is a kind of a send. When they try, they test, but they have to invest something. They lost some money, maybe even. They understood that it is serious, and they are ready for their grown-up life when you can go and start up, because startup is the start, and the start again. Thank you. Do you have anything to add? I think it's totally appropriate to say that successful startups are the third, the fourth, or the fifth of the same entrepreneur only. So if the entrepreneur has the opportunity to launch the startup, it impacts whether the businesses are successful, in spite of the success of those businesses. But if we try to create this way, to describe it, this is the program at the university, then we have the incubator, then accelerator. Or there are certain options after the training, and the student wouldn't go to the incubator or can pilot his or her business. So what can happen when, for instance, it didn't work from the first attempt, and then there is some fear to try again, because Europe has certain projects which are focused on the younger entrepreneurs and on acting entrepreneurs. The second chance program, when the entrepreneurs who lost their business can have certain assistance from the state in the education and in the funding, and even to try to create their new business from scratch. Do the international practices have something like that when we speak about young entrepreneurship? This is the first question. And the second one, how should this system look like in Ukraine when we speak about the students' entrepreneurship? Should we have a similar program? I think that entrepreneurship can be done not only when you're doing business on your own, but when you're working with the cool professionals, when you are the member of the founding team. So there are several product IT companies in Ukraine who are providing opportunities to join certain teams, some new project, and if you're not totally sure, or you first understood that you lack some critical skills, you can be a founding member of a certain startup in the intrapreneurship in some company. I think that this way is less risky and allows to get necessary knowledge for further success. A cool idea, thank you. As for the international practices, what we need to take is the culture of encouraging to fail, that it is okay to fail. Not to achieve success in the first startup is classic. It is weird, it is surprising when you have the success instantly, and the investor will be even cautious when the person didn't have any failures and wants some substantial investments. This what needs to be encouraged not at the university but even at school, because we have to get the maximum assessment. But if you failed in something, what will happen then? What's your work on the errors? How you take that into account in the following task of yours in your life at all? This element in the startup mindset is so important. Thank you, Dmitro. I totally agree with the speakers, and I can also add that there should be a community. If there is a community, they can see I'm not the only one to fail. He also failed and he achieved success. It should be communicated. All the media, the state should support that. And whatever was mentioned above, and this community with the friends or with the acquaintances who had it already and achieved success. This is like AA meeting. I used to be in entrepreneurship and I failed, and then I have support. And I understand that this is the perfect idea. It's okay to fail. It's natural. When the person is beginning to, with the first steps in the childhood, tries and falls down, and after 1,000 of falling down, he can run. So in your opinion, you are the representatives of businesses and incubators, but I'm the representative of the ministry. And I would ask you today to tell me top 3 or top 5 of the steps which you would advise for the state to develop young entrepreneurship and to develop the ecosystem of young entrepreneurship. Maybe more, maybe less, but still. Some of the steps which you would recommend to do, which you could see as necessary ones, if there are any. Maybe someone from our colleagues who are online with us. Would you like to comment? Charles?
So I had looked into this a few years ago, and I don't know if the rules have changed, but the Ministry of Education, as I understand it, has a very strict set of criteria for what classes get credit and what classes don't. And that really should change. Cornell Tech, that I mentioned, right? It's our very large, very expensive campus, is really a large incubator. We have traditional classes, but we also have classes that center around the incubator. It's not just simply limited to entrepreneurs either, right? You want to build the ecosystem. So for example, we have a program, a clinic, made up of law students, and they provide legal support for startups. We have in our business faculty, we have students that are focused on providing financial advice to startups. Again, students helping students, not to mention the entrepreneurs. And so at Cornell Tech, again, we have traditional classes, but we also have classes where you actually get credit for working in the incubator. Not a lot of credit, but still some credit, and it makes it part of the DNA. It means that a student doesn't have to think about doing an incubator as a hobby or something separate. It actually becomes part of their studies, and it makes them much more focused on what they're doing.
Дякую.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So we are short of time, but we wanted to speak about lots of points. I'd like to raise one more topic now of public-private partnership with the support of the universities, with the companies. According to your experience, how it took place now, and what would be the perfect picture of cooperation of the universities with businesses? Well, I don't want it to sound like complaining, but we have to search for initiative among the people in the universities. It's not like coming to any person, any dean, and he will be initiative about your proposals and suggestions. But we need to search for such people. I already see, and our team sees, that the number of these people increases because we assess the university according to the success of their graduates, which depends on their curriculum, which corresponds to what the companies need. So this focus on the success of the graduates through the lens, whether they are successful after the graduation in their work, in their entrepreneurship, and so on, this focus for this assessment at the universities will help to properly assess the universities, the faculties, the departments, and their success. Okay, thank you, Ksenia. I would answer the question, what needs to be done by the state for it to take place in the PPP, the private-public partnership. We should get rid of the manual management. We shouldn't save the universities which cannot survive. We shouldn't find the criteria which would help them. The universities which are not competitive it would be the best for the state, for the people, for the students, not to have those universities anymore. Yes, it is harsh, but it is true. The universities will have to encourage the culture of entrepreneurship. So why does the entrepreneurial universities emerge in the United States or Israel? Because they didn't have the way out. The huge economic crisis, the state cannot help, they don't have to pay the students, they need to invent something more. What other resource do they have? The scientific achievements, which were left since the past, the scientists and the academics in the universities, they have some institutional approach. The management of this huge machine, what they need to do, they need to become a startup themselves. They shouldn't be afraid to try something different, to change, not to be afraid to fail. It's not painful even for such a big institution as a university. YEP managed to cooperate with the universities because YEP began as a grassroots initiative. We first worked with the initiative people which were ready to implement such projects. And only then we had the support of the superiors of the universities. It is nice, but it also involves certain problems. So far, the people who are working at the universities as the teachers, they're more initiative and open than the bosses at the universities, though the rectors should be so interested in the progress, in the breakthroughs, because this is what the university is about. Dmitro? I have very harsh response. It's working in the whole developed world. There should be the client-centric business, and we have the different way. That's why they don't care what the student wants, what he or she gets, whether he or she gets the job. They don't earn on the students. They earn on different things, which we won't name, plus lease and rent, and that's it. The changes are always painful for them, but just imagine 50 and 60 years he was the boss of the university, and now he is told, you need to change. What will happen? Nothing will happen. There would be denial. There will be the standard psychological denial. I will never do that. Then, later, it will catch up, but it will be a bit late. We need to change this client-centric approach, how it should be done. How can we change those stale, formed, stagnated rectors? I don't know. This should be a harsh response, but it's true. We should stop giving them money. Well, then they will earn in a different way. Then it won't be the profit of the university. Then the university will begin to degrade, the society will respond, the students will respond, the students will respond. This will be the reaction. Yes, this is the way through the students. So this is how we're coming back to the culture issue and the culture of entrepreneurship. It's understanding, it's creation. We do understand that this is the long-lasting process. Unfortunately, it's not what can happen in a year, in a 2 or 3. But how can we develop, how can we cultivate, how can we show what entrepreneurship is, how can we develop this culture? I can give you the short remark now, and then I will give the floor to you. I personally, during the last year and a half, understand that the information campaigns are not what is working. It can tell, but not involve. But we need involvement, the first try, the first attempt for the university, for the teacher, and for the student who is dreaming to become the entrepreneur. If we are speaking together about the development of this entrepreneurship culture, what are your ideas about that? Is it real in Ukraine? If yes, then when? What's needed to be done for that? Let's be honest, but short. I think it's the proper way to inform people, but we need more acting factors. For instance, money. If we want to motivate the students to create startups, they need to have all the conditions, including funding. How much of funding, in your opinion, should be for one university, or for instance, for a certain number of students which are studying at the course of Entrepreneurial Institute? Ksenia, how much, in average, how many students were studying? The group is approximately 20 students. Okay, 20 to 30 students at one university. How much money do they need to motivate? I think that the program of Startup Fund is successful enough. This program is enough. $25,000 for the seed round, multiply by the number of the participants. It will be $500,000 for the university, yes. Involvement of the teachers to develop the skills which are needed for the development, not just to read the curriculum. I think that if they had bonus programs or something on business for them to be assessed fairly and how it is needed for the future of Ukraine, it should also help. Okay, thank you. It seems to me that at this stage, the students don't need money at all. They are not ready to take investments. They don't know how to use them, how to spend them. So different opinions. But if we have some endless money here and if we can invest them into the university, we should form the atmosphere, the infrastructure. Not a single University of Kiev is ready to take a big business conference to receive some international speakers and investors. They don't have the technical conditions for that, and it is awful. It shouldn't be like that. The university should be the center of attraction and communication, the center of gravity for the entrepreneurs, the venture. For that, they need comfortable conditions, convenient conditions. The same for the students. They need to work on their project for free without taking the place in the co-working in Kiev at their university. The same as for the labs. They need access to the equipment, highly desirable modern equipment, an opportunity to test their ideas, to fail and to make conclusions. So we need to invest, besides the development and training, besides the curriculum, into the infrastructure, not only in the labs, but altogether the modern spaces, and the impact of the development of entrepreneurship culture. The people will try and tell others, they will show how it's working or not working. They will have the carriers of those culture. It is important. For instance, if the university doesn't rent the space for the Xerox machine, but the place for the younger employees and students, they will go together to the dining room, they will meet in the halls, they will drink coffee together. This is very important, to have the mixture of this entrepreneurial culture. They're not getting to the universities, but we need to bring them there. Dmitro, the culture of entrepreneurship, your topic, right? Yes. I have lots of points to say, but I support whatever was mentioned above. We need more money than $500,000. That's definite. Because of this situation, I agree that the students don't need the money, but I don't agree that they don't want it. They will deal with entrepreneurship if they see that this is a motivation for them, just because of that. If they just spent it, yes, I do agree it, but it needs to be done. And one more point, and I will mention an example. We need to unite all of the players, the corporations, the state, the university, the incubators, the accelerators, the co-workings need to unite, because it's easier to be together, and then the information flows won't be just created, the information how to create business, but some success cases. He did it, this one did it, he became the unicorn, and you can do that as well. You should be involved into the community, and if you're not becoming the unicorn, you're coming to the genesis and you're becoming the supported entrepreneur, and then you create the spin-off, which is also supported, and then he is bought by the company. These cases need to be communicated. We have some problems with the communications. For instance, the epicenter, the center of Stockholm, 7 floors of the big atrium, which unites training, community, co-working, and there we can see SEB Bank, Volvo Cars at the same premises. This is the R&D department in the startup system. In the morning, the Volvo cars are going to the balcony and saying, guys, we have a task. And all the startups are joining, solving the issue, and it was working with Volvo cars. This is how to unite everybody at the same physical space, but sometimes it can be done not at the physical space. Do you think Ukraine has the state or public institute or private institute, any educational institution which can be named the institute where we train the future entrepreneurs? I think that yes, this is the IT school of Genesis, because approximately 70% of the heads of the teams and projects of Genesis to this or that extent faced this program, and 20% of those heads of the programs were directly trained in this IT school, which is for free, and it trains how to create the project, how to start in the project. And I think that it really recommended itself as the school for the future entrepreneurs, having more than 100 graduates in its history. Cool, thank you for your answer, Ksenia. Well, I can't help mentioning YEP is such an organization, and Genesis, of course. And the Ministry of Digital Transformation is doing a lot, because you are the state startup. This is the spirit of entrepreneurship. Being the ministry, startup ministry, you are inspiring lots of people to begin your own startups. Ukrainian Fund of Startups is doing a lot to develop this ecosystem. Ukraine has universities which are really achieving a lot in that. For instance, the Tech Startup School in Lviv Polytechnic, they do a big piece of work. Thank you, Dmitro. What was the question about the public, the state institutions? No, any institution which brings up, well, the incubator, of course. And anybody else? Because we have a unique curriculum. Out of the public ones, out of the state ones, according to my observations, we can't say that it is better. We don't have the best. We have the best of the worst. But I think that this is the Ukrainian Catholic University, and also Kyiv Mohyla Academy, but with some issues. Though I'm the teacher at the KMBS, and I love Kyiv Mohyla Academy, and we have become partners, but the graduates are coming to me, and we need to retrain them. But this is just the beginning. So Ukrainian Catholic University, Kyiv Mohyla Academy, not my Kyiv Polytechnic Institute, though it has Sikorsky Challenge, but still, it does not support this movement. There is an issue with the infrastructure, so it's like that. Dear colleagues, in fact, we are watched by lots of students. Maybe the graduates of the Entrepreneurial Institute program, or maybe those who are just thinking whether they should take part in the second selection and to begin the training. So to conclude, I would ask each of you to say top 3 Ukrainian startups. It's highly desirable to have youth startups in this list, which you should pay attention to as the success story. And what's the main advice which you would give to the youth, to the young people who would like to have their own business, but they are in doubts, they are still frightened, afraid, they are still maybe lost and they don't know what to do? Top 3, yes. Number 1, Genesis. Number 2, Better Me. Number 3, GJ. And a recommendation, the best recommendation for the beginners, just begin. 3 more, Genesis, Better Me, and GG. Okay, thank you. Ksenia, I will praise the new ones, which just appeared and showed the best progress. Elomia for the psychological support. CamTouch, the cam which transforms any surface into the interactive one. And Minigrosum, they create the micro grill. So this is also the accessoire for the office. Yes, I have it. I have it as well, and I like it very much. Yes, I would agree. You should begin. You should start as quick as possible. Even if you're at your second year of university, it is yours. If you don't like it, if you fail, you have the whole life ahead. You can try something different. But you can try yourselves in the entrepreneurship to create the startup. Even if you just then hired, you will have the skills which are much more attractive than your competitors. 100% agree. I think whom I should list for it not to be too trivial. I love non-IT, non-coding startups. I support you because there is the new Skype in green is already the startup and innovation is the color. So that's why I like Delfast, our bikes story, which already doing something at the world market. I would like to support our graduates. There is the startup of Quick Help. This is the family business. The family business of a husband and a wife. She's the doctor, he's the seller. They created the kits which can really save lives. And as we bring up conscious entrepreneurs, they have a social mission. Those kits are created at their enterprise with the people with disabilities. They help them with the sewing. And these kits, medical kits, is upgraded and you can subscribe for it. This is about startups. And what should be done? You should try. You should go to YEP, to the entrepreneurial programs and curriculum which the universities have. You should come to us because YEP as well is just a sand. Yeah, it is a kind of a sandpit, a sandbox. You can try it without the risks. This is the simulation of the reality. This is the Matrix, the reality show. When I'm watching The Voice, I think, well, in fact, this is the incubator, in fact. It is the incubator. And this reality show should be done, and then, only then you can feel that it is either scary or not. But before that, you will never feel it. And the last floor is given to our colleagues if you're still with us online. Unfortunately, oh yes, we can see Volodymyr, please. Top 3 startups without considering yours. I will not repeat the startups, but I'd like to add such a startup as MyPolice. Now it's called MyPol. Well, it's not the young startup. What can I advise? Well, first of all, you should take part in the course on innovation management. If you have such a course in your university, you should work more with the real sector. You should see the ideas which the real sector has now. A very nice example of the Netherlands was already mentioned today when the graduates, ex-graduates of the corporates are going to their alma mater and they mention their issues they faced then, and the students are forming startup teams. Then they conduct certain competitions and contests, and those corporations are giving some money which is enough to create the validation, the primary validation. This is how the students can get motivation, some addition to their stipend. And this experience is so important for Ukraine to use it vast. Thank you. Would you like to add anything, Charles? Yes, we can see you.
Thank you. So as the co-founder of an incubator, I can never pick which one of my children is the most beautiful. What I would ask you to do is look at all of our graduates from AO. Probably the one that most appeals to the young people is a company called Juki, D-J-O-O-K-Y. And again, I'll do what all parents do, and I'll tell you, you should go onto their website. It's Juki Awards.
Wow.
They are a music trading platform, but currently they are actually a music awards and competition, global competition. So I'd recommend all of you to sign up. We want more registered users. But this will also give you a good idea of how real startups are in Ukraine. This is a company that's been around for only, 12 months? They have an implied valuation now of greater than $20 million. They're based in Kiev. They've received over, $2 million in funding. They haven't had to move. They're not in Poland. They're not in Europe. They're based in Kiev. And it just gives you a strong sense of the value of what Ukraine has and how globally competitive the country can be. The other point for young people, entrepreneurship doesn't mean startups. You can be an entrepreneur in a big company. You can be an entrepreneur in the government. The skills that you learn in an incubator apply even outside what you do in a startup. And so I'd encourage you, even if you think eventually you're not going to be in a startup, take advantage of the opportunity. Learn these skills that will make you better at whatever it is you end up deciding to do.
Дякую дуже.
Thank you so much for such important and useful points. Unfortunately, we have really short of time to speak about all of the points which we are worried about, which are so interesting. So let's meet again. Yes, I'd like to invite all of you to gather again together, but today I'd like to thank for an opportunity to get acquainted with each of you, for the opportunity to debate, to hear lots of interesting ideas, maybe even suggestions, sometimes harsh criticism, but true one which we'll try to take into consideration and to work with it. That is why I'd like to thank all of those who are also watching us. I'd like to say that all of the future entrepreneurs, all the acting entrepreneurs who need free consultancy or who need certain new knowledge in these or those spheres, would you please use the project of Dear Business, which was created by the Ministry of Digital Transformation. This project is accessible by the link business.gov.ua. We are the partners of the project of Entrepreneurial University, and I'd like to use this opportunity to express my gratitude. The whole team of YEP, as Andriy Zikin, Ksenia Semenova, the whole team of YEP for the implementation of such a cool project within which we trained almost 4,000 students with the topic of entrepreneurship. We will be expecting for real MVP from our students. We have some first ideas, and let's keep in touch. Have a good day.